However, before Wu Xian and the others could return to their senses, a vortex could suddenly be seen by the naked eye, slowly forming between the two people. The vortex spun, first absorbing the spiritual power in the room, and gradually accelerating its speed as it slowly expanded. Once it shrouded Wu Xian and the others, it then spread outside the room. As Wu Xian stood absent-minded, he unexpectedly felt a great invisible force start to suction out the spiritual power from within his body. What's going on here? How could this be? With shock written across everyone's faces, they hurriedly set up protective barriers around their bodies, capable of resisting that suction. Fortunately, after they set up the protective barriers around their bodies, the suction disappeared without a trace. No, more precisely, the suction bypassed them, following the vortex to spread out to surrounding areas. Wu Xian gazed towards the delicate and slender girl on the bed, his eyes showing bewilderment. Is this strange vortex created by this woman? Was this why Master insisted on risking his life to save her? In the end, just who is she? Slut, why with Master? Get off him. Go die. A shrill scream suddenly reached their ears. Wu Xian and the others turned their heads, only to find Zhu Ke looking insane as she rushed towards the two intimate people on the bed. Chapter 132. Unlucky Zhu Ke. As Zhu Ke stood there, the huge vortex hovered over her, and little by little, it suctioned out many years' worth of her accumulated spiritual power that she had cultivated. Her complexion aged and withered at a speed naked to the eye, yet she was completely unaware of it. Zhu Ke's entire body trembled as she became devoid of rationality, and she rushed towards Hushi in the center of the vortex. It is unknown when, but she was now holding a dagger, the tip shining a strange blue-green. Obviously it is smeared with something highly poisonous. A crazy smile was plastered across Zhu Ke's lips. Even if she had to risk her cultivation base, she must kill this woman. She must get revenge of the hatred due to her disfigurement. Furthermore, she will not let this slut snatch Master away. Zhu Ke, you can't. Qing Long and the others exclaimed, their complexions suddenly changing. However, it was too late, the sharp dagger blurring as it was fiercely stabbed towards Hushi. But the expected eruption of blood didn't happen. On the contrary, Zhu Ke, who had rushed over, screamed, and with her body resembling a kite flying off after its string is broken, she flew around the room, finally crashing into a wall. She spit out a mouthful of blood, denial and hatred in her eyes as she glanced at Hushi, then fainted with disappointment written across her features. Bai Hu looked at her worriedly, whispering. Zhu Ke didn't form a protective barrier over herself before she fainted. Her cultivation base. Humph, she valued her jealousy more than Master's safety. She reaps what she sowed. Wu Xian's cold and pitiless words instantly dispelled Bai Hu's intention of helping Zhu Quebec. Just at this moment, Nangongyu suddenly opened his eyes in the center of the vortex. He first thoroughly examined Hushi's body using his spiritual power, to make sure she wasn't in any danger. Then his cold dark eyes swept around the room, finally landing on several of his subordinates outside the door. Wu Xian and the others felt their bodies quiver all over under the gaze of those cruel icy red eyes, to the point that they were almost unable to maintain their protective barriers. Nangongyu coldly snorted, then said in a low voice, "No, next time. Whoever dares to violate my orders in the future, don't even bother to appear in front of me again." As he finished speaking, he waved his hand, and the door that was knocked open by Wu Xian closed in a flash, firmly sealed with a spiritual power enchantment. Wu Xian gasped for breath, his face sagging into an expression of relief after the terror he had felt. Just a moment ago, Master's expression when he had looked at him was really too frightening. Wu Yu frowned while muttering next to him, "It's close to the time for Master's illness to show up. If Master is like this now, what will happen to him later? Will he be okay?" They all looked at each other in dismay, sinking into a depressed silence. At this time, everyone worrying in the courtyard of Hell King Manor wouldn't know. But that vortex, which had first only affected the 6 of them, had now swept throughout Yanjing City. Apart from Nangongyu, no one knew that in the center of this vortex, the seal on Hushi's dantian is gradually lifting. At this moment, Hushi's dantian resembled a dissatisfied and greedy black hole, Countless amounts of spiritual energy was being sucked in, but when the spiritual energy was completely absorbed, it was still unsatisfied. The vortex continued to expand, and the fierce wind began to strengthen abruptly, causing dust and sand to fly everywhere. While the spiritual energy that was drawn into the vortex, regardless of whether it was from the air or the vegetation, was completely absorbed. Demonic beasts in the forest rampaged, their bodies all emitting a harsh light as they resisted their spiritual energy being absorbed with all their strength. In the sky of Yanjing City, martial artists riding on flying swords suddenly felt the swords under their feet start buzzing, and no longer able to transfer their spiritual power, they fell down from the sky one by one. Fortunately, every martial artist that is able to fly possessed a magical tool that would protect their body and save their life, so they were luckily able to escape from an ending of becoming a meat patty. Chapter 133. Demon Day and Night in Yanjing City. For anyone that is a cultivator, when they tried to absorb spiritual power, they discovered that not only were they unable to absorb any, but instead, an invisible force was extracting the spiritual power within their bodies. All the martial artists turned pale with fright, and immediately, they took out all kinds of spiritual talismans and magical tools to resist this powerful suction. However, this force was much larger than they expected, so other than martial artists at gold core stage or higher who were able to form protective barriers, the rest of the martial artists, no matter how powerful a magical item they used, they couldn't stop the spiritual power dissipating within their bodies. At this time in Yanjing City, alleyways that are normally silent as soon as the sun set, were instead in chaos. Even the older generations from large influential families that were in closed-door cultivation were alarmed, having come out earlier. Every major family, including Jin Ling's royal family, all sent out troops to inquire and investigate the source of why they were unable to use their spiritual power. Unfortunately, since all the martial artists were unable to use their full strength, they naturally couldn't find the source of this weird phenomenon. Suddenly, the absorption of spiritual power sped up, and in the sky above Yanjing City, there appeared a huge white vortex, visible to the naked eye. The vortex rotated faster and faster, while its size grew larger and larger. Hovering above Yanjing City, it resembled a white sun, lighting up the entire city. Heavens, what's that? Is this vortex absorbing our spiritual power? In the end, what is this? All the martial artists in Yanjing City rushed outside to look at the glaring white vortex. Suddenly someone shouted out, "Demon Day and Night has arrived. This is the beginning of the Demon Day and Night." Once these words were said, all the martial artists burst out in a huge uproar, horror expressed on everyone's faces. Demon Day and Night? Could this really be the world's biggest calamity, Demon Day and Night? Doesn't that mean the big calamity will soon descend upon Miluo continent? In the distance, a man with the appearance of an evildoer, with long and narrow phoenix eyes, was at this moment standing on the summit of a mountain. Looking at the white light in the distant east that was just like a scorching sun, the corner of his mouth raised into a brilliant smile. After waiting for so long, has it finally appeared? At this point, in the center of the vortex, Hushi wasn't the slightest bit aware that she had caused something strange. Currently unconscious, her originally dried up and empty dantian was little by little being filled. The meridians throughout her body were being nourished by the pure essence of spiritual power, and after circulating around her body 12 times, it then returned to her dantian. The last seal that remained on her dantian had now been destroyed, eroding away with the pure spiritual power, causing Hushi's cultivation base to rapidly increase in stages. Early stage of qi refining, middle stage of qi refining, peak of qi refining. Nangongyu slightly raised an eyebrow as he watched the cultivation base of the girl in his arms rising. Slowly it broke through to the qi refining stage, and from the qi refining stage, in a flash it rose to the advanced rank of the foundation establishment stage. Yet despite this, the growth of her cultivation base still didn't stop. Such a frightening advancing speed. If other martial artists were to see it, they would certainly be scared to the point that their eyes would fall from their sockets. Nangongyu bowed his head, kissing the girl's warm and soft, rose-petal lips. So although the blood within his body had begun to freeze, causing his body to tremble in pain, while his skin is pale and transparent, seeming as if it will crack at any time. His lips still formed a gentle and soft smile. At the same time, Hushy's space was also undergoing earth-shaking changes. Chapter 134. High-rank Foundation Establishment Stage. The bottom of the 9th secluded spirit spring boiled. A vortex hovered above ancient Rhyme's spiritual field, and a click could be heard from every door in Shumi Palace. And inside Shumi Palace, inside one of the empty rooms, the constantly leaping light within the huge egg suddenly froze. Cracks now started to appear across its formerly smooth surface, as if something was about to break out of it. Warm sunshine shone in from outside, illuminating Hushy's body. The speck of golden light flickered across her beautiful and delicate face, resembling a naughty spirit, causing her to wake. With her long eyelashes slightly trembling, Hushy frowned as she slowly opened her eyes. Just as she was about to move her body, she suddenly released a pained groan. Her whole body felt like it had been crushed by elephants running over it. The ache was unbearable, especially the meridians within her body. They felt like they had been pulled by something. Even moving one finger was painful. Hushy took a deep breath, wanting to soothe her body by running her internal energy through it. Yet unexpectedly, her dantian slightly responded as well. There was the pure essence of spiritual power overflowing from her dantian, and in a flash, it spread to the meridians throughout her body. Under the nourishment from the spiritual power circulating, the pain in her meridians slowly soothed, gradually helping her limbs to become more flexible. The feeling resembled a whole-body massage, and Hushy couldn't help but sigh due to the comfortableness of it. Suddenly, her expression changed and she abruptly sat up. With the spiritual power in her dantian working, and using the awareness of divine sense, one to be able to see clearly, she could watch the spiritual power slowly wandering about in her meridians. When the spiritual power reached the meridian running to her hand, Hushy's mind focused, and in the next moment, a multicolored ball of light formed on her palm. Shocked, she lost her focus, and the multicolored ball of light instantly disappeared. How could this be? Her dantian is unsealed? Moreover, the spiritual power within her dantian had raised her cultivation base to at least 9th rank of the Foundation Establishment Stage. Her memories from before she lost consciousness slowly overflowed, and she remembered that she was being chased by several Meridian Stage assassins who wanted to kill her, so she had fled into Tsong Mountain. Although she had tried every method to deal with them, even managing to kill 2 of them, in the end, there was still a gap in their strength and hers, and the enemy had stabbed her through the chest and abdomen with a sword. Yet now her body wasn't injured, while her skin was even more exquisite and translucent than before. Even the white whip scars marring her skin had completely disappeared. So is she really completely awake? Furthermore, in such a short while she had managed to jump over the chi refining stage, landing on a high rank of the Foundation Establishment Stage? Hushy's heart filled with joy. After transmigrating, her strength had been too weak, and she had had no way to advance as her dantian was sealed, so all along she was anxious. The Majestic by Wu Cheng too, the organization's youngest gold medal killer since the beginning of history, had unexpectedly fallen to the point of being called trash in a different world. Now that she had finally broken her shackles and advanced to the Foundation Establishment Stage in such a short while, how could she not be happy? One must know that apart from here, the prodigy-filled Hell King Manor, that throughout all of Yanjing City, there is only a few Meridian Stage martial artists. While it was possible to count the amount of gold core stage martial artists with only 10 fingers. In her memories, Naylan Feishue was called a talented martial artist because it had only taken her 2 years to reach the early stages of the Foundation Establishment Stage. Hushy laughed lightly. She couldn't help but spread her palm out once again, and very soon, another multicolored ball of light filled with spiritual power appeared on her palm. Focusing her mind, she subtly controlled the spiritual power, and without much effort that multicolored ball of light turned red, representing the fire element. Hushy's eyes shone, and the red-colored ball of spiritual power soon became blue, representing the water element. One divine sense, an ability possessed by cultivators to scan their surroundings, far beyond the limits of their ordinary 5 senses, with their spirit. The total area they can scan corresponds to the strength of their spirit. 2 by Wuchang. White Impermanence. Hushy's assassin name from her past life. Chapter 135. Soft and white meatball. According to her thoughts, she was unexpectedly able to change the ball of spiritual power into 5 different colors, as well as combine them. However, don't common martial artists only have a single white color to represent their spiritual power? Even double attribute spiritual roots display a milky white color. Furthermore, the more spiritual roots a person has, and the more spiritual power they use, the white ball of light would appear dusky, like a muddy moon. Suddenly, a young and tender child's voice sounded in Hushy's mind. Silly mother, this is because mother's cultivation is the 5 elements of spiritual power, so of course there are 5 different colors. Hushy was surprised at first. Then she realized that this familiar child's voice belonged to Dandan. But, didn't Dandan say that when she was outside her space, they would be unable to communicate? Yet now she could clearly hear Dandan's voice from inside her space. So didn't that mean that Dandan had also risen in rank? Hushy's heart pounded, and in a flash her consciousness entered her space. Once she entered her space, Hushy felt that the spiritual energy was now more than 10 times richer than it previously was as it assaulted her senses. Before she had a chance to look around at the changes in her space though, she suddenly felt something round run into her arms with a thump. Hushy staggered back several steps, before she then steadied herself with difficulty, raising the small thing in her arms in front of her eyes. This is a smooth, soft and white meatball, or jelly to be more precise. Touching it feels really good. It was cool, soft, and its color resembled silky milk. Anyone who looked at it will crave to swallow it. On top of the meatball is a small round head, and on its small head it didn't have hair, but 2 slender antennae. At this moment that small head was slightly tilted, its antennae gently swaying, while a pair of big, watery, jet black eyes occupied half of its face, staring with a fixed gaze at Hushy. For short, small, and fat lotus root-like limbs incessantly moved, and a pitiful protest came out from its mouth. Mother, mother. Dandan feels uncomfortable when you carry me like this. Mother, Dandan wants to be hugged. Those big black eyes blinked, brimming with childlike admiration and longing as they looked at Hushy. So although Hushy has a cold and emotionless heart, when being looked at by these adorable eyes, of course her heart would be moved. She blinked and asked, "You're Dandan?" "MHM." Dandan nodded. Suddenly it struggled to free itself from Hushy's raised hands, and with one jump, it hung itself around Hushy's neck. "Mother, I'm Dandan. Dandan missed you so much." Feeling its soft and jelly-like texture touch her face and rub lightly, acting like a spoiled child who would throw a tantrum, Hushy simply didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She grabbed it from her neck, but this time adjusted the way she held it so it could be comfortable. Looking at its plump body she frowned. "How come you're so fat?" "Letting you eat and eat every day, now look. Now you've turned into a rolling ball." Dandan heard this and immediately started crying. "Dandan not fat. Dandan's originally like this. Mother dislikes me, wah." Alright. Dandan's the cutest, Dandan's the slimmest. Mother doesn't dislike you, will this do?" Hushy appeased it for half a day, and only then did the overly sensitive, spoilt, spiritual pet feel good. She recalled its words from just a moment ago, and asked, "What did you mean when you said the 5 elements of spiritual power?" 5 elements of spiritual power, wasn't it 5 spiritual roots? The 5 spiritual roots in a cultivation world were known as useless spiritual roots, and that was practically what her previously crippled Dantian was. But it seemed that when referring to her spiritual power, it wasn't the same. Chapter 136. Promoted Space. Dandan bit a finger, blinking its big eyes as it looked at Hushy. The 5 elements of spiritual power are metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. 5 types of spiritual power. Mother, you don't even know about this? Hushy held her forehead. She shouldn't have had hope for Dandan's IQ. Moreover, this guy obviously didn't know anything. Yet it had an expression on its face that showed it thought she was stupid. "Fine. I'll just ignore you. We'll see whether you'll be able to be good or not." Hushy no longer paid any attention to this little imp, and turning her head, She began to examine the changes in her space. That's right, after only one night, Hushi had not only lifted the seal on her dantian, promoting to foundation establishment stage, but Dandan had hatched from its egg, while her space had also experienced a big change. Originally vast, the ancient rhyme spiritual field now expanded further away than the naked eye could see, and the spiritual herbs that grew in her space had all matured in one night. One must know that in Miluo continent, spiritual herbs are graded by years. For example, the growth period for a first-grade spiritual herb is 10 years, for a second-grade spiritual herb it's 100 years, for a third-grade spiritual herb it's 1,000 years, for a fourth-grade spiritual herb it's 5,000 years, and for a fifth-grade spiritual herb it's 10,000 years. It's very difficult to find spiritual herbs that are 5th grade and higher, and it's not so easy to distinguish how old they are. Originally, the ancient rhyme spiritual field could accelerate a plant's growth period 100-fold, but for first or second grade spiritual herbs to grow into third grade spiritual herbs, it still requires a long process. Yet now, in only one night, several stalks of third grade spiritual herbs had matured. What made Hushi even more amazed is that a portion of first-grade spiritual plants in her space had unexpectedly advanced to second-grade spiritual plants. In Miluo continent, this kind of situation was unheard of. Hushi quickly walked to the 9th secluded spirit spring, noticing that from its outward appearance, nothing had changed in the spirit spring. But when she cupped her hands to try and drink a mouthful, she felt that compared to its previous rich spiritual energy, it had now increased several times in such a short while, nourishing the 5 viscera and 6 bowels in her body. With such potent spiritual power infusing her meridians, not only did she not feel pain, instead, she was so comfortable she released a sigh. It seems that even the 9th secluded spirit spring has promoted. Hushi was pleased and noticed Dandan imitating her by leaning on the side of spirit spring, its small head stretching over to drink a mouthful of spring water. Yet after drinking just 2 mouthfuls it suddenly raised its body, flinging the water off its head, and said with a deflated expression, "No taste, it's not tasty at all." Hushi was amused by Dandan's small appearance despising the water. She then discovered that since the spiritual plants in her space had matured, and that the spiritual energy is so rich, Dandan is no longer interested. Even the 9th secluded spirit spring is actually being despised by him. You're a little guy that doesn't know what's good. Before, as long as it contains spiritual energy, wouldn't you happily eat it all? Now that you've grown up, you've actually learned to be picky about food. Dandan hugged Hushi's arm, its body hanging off her as it acted like a spoiled child, and said, "Mother makes the best foods to eat. Dandan could eat it for a lifetime and will never dislike it." "Mother, Dandan hungry, so hungry. I want to eat Mother's tasty roast chicken, cake, and rabbit meat." Black lines appeared on Hushi's forehead. She felt that this little guy did nothing but eat when it was in the egg, and now that it's hatched it's become a picky eater. In the future, will it keep eating till she becomes a pauper? Hushi didn't know, but ever since Dandan had been eating the spiritual foods that she made, its appetite had begun to be wicked. As previously, Dandan had no way to refuse it if it wanted to break out of its shell. But after hatching, it has a human sense of taste and aesthetics, leading it to begin avoiding things with spiritual energy, but no taste. Of course, if the spiritual energy is rich to a certain extent, Dandan will still ignore the taste and drool. Chapter 137, Spirit Firmament Palace. However, thinking about it now, Hushi herself is also hungry. Just before she was chased by the assassins, she had made a lot of food and placed it safely in a room in Shumi Palace, specifically finding a cabinet to organize and store different foods. Remembering it now made her salivate. One must know that the time in Shumi Palace has practically stopped, so the food stored inside, no matter how long it is left there, is still exactly the same as when it was stored. So when it's removed, even the steam wouldn't have dissipated. Arriving at the front of Shumi Palace, Hushi was surprised to discover that even Shumi Palace has gone through some strange changes. Shumi Palace has 81 doors, and in total there are 9 palaces all grouped together, 9 doors to every palace. Yet because most of the doors were closed, Hushi was unable to see what was inside them. Therefore, up until now Hushi had only known what the first palace is called, the Spirit Firmament Palace. The only door open there was the first room where Dandan was placed. But now, after her space had promoted, the originally locked 8 doors had unexpectedly disappeared. There was now only one door remaining with the words Spirit Firmament Door on top of it, and at this moment it was closed. Hushi slowly pushed the door open, and in a flash, her mind was suddenly filled with vague information. 9th Palace in Heaven, this is Spirit Firmament. All living things are for thou to use. The door completely opened, and the first thing Hushi saw is 8 jade boxes floating in the air, surrounded by flickering white light. The shape of these jade boxes is quite ordinary, and on the jade boxes a simple totem is carved. Hushi felt that she had seen this totem somewhere before. Each jade box is surrounded by a milky white, close to transparent light, and the jade boxes floated around the room on this light, like mischievous imps. Hushi reached out her hand to catch them, yet they darted away before she could even grab one. Her eyes were following one of the jade boxes, when her gaze fell to the left corner of the room, and suddenly she was so shocked she nearly jumped. She saw an extremely familiar storage rack, and arranged on it had been her cooking tools, etc. Clearly the Spirit Firmament Door was Dandan's former location. But now that corner is in a mess. The small doors on the storage rack were open. Empty bowls and plates were piled in a heap, while there were several chewed bones thrown to the ground. Veins appeared on Hushi's forehead, and turning around, she saw Dandan duck its small head. With the appearance of a guilty conscience, it secretly tried to slip away, immediately letting Hushi know who the culprit is. She extended out her hand, grabbed its neck, and lifted it before her eyes, darkly asking, "Dandan, did you eat these things?" Dandan ducked its small head again, pitifully replying, "Mother, I was hungry, when I climbed out of the egg. Hungry, so I eat." The corner of Hushi's mouth twitched. This cabinet was full of food. You've eaten so much, yet you still dare to shout at me that you're hungry. Her braised moon chicken, roasted cloud rabbit, preserved porcupine leg, 2 full storage racks of food. She spent a lot of crystal stones to buy the ingredients, and little by little built up a stockpile, yet unexpectedly, it was all finished overnight. Moreover, when she looked Dandan up and down, it looked so small. How could it eat so much food? The amount of food was 10 times the size of it. Dandan's mouth flattened, and weeping, it said in a sorrowful child's voice, "Dandan's body is growing, of course I will be hungry. Mother, don't get angry, okay?" Hushi felt helpless. She was unable to find a way to deal with this terrible eater of food. Chapter 138. Divine Sense Imprint. Hushi put Dandan back on the ground, but it immediately tried to take advantage of her, and clung to the bottom of her clothes, shouting about being hungry. This time Hushi completely ignored its spoiled child act, spreading out her hands. "Everything was eaten by you. Where would I get the ingredients from in such a short time? I have no energy either, so there's nothing I can do, you'll just have to starve. Furthermore, I want you to clean up this mess you made, otherwise, you'll never eat the food that I make again." Finished speaking, she no longer cared about Dandan's tantrum, and instead started to examine the jade boxes. Dandan yelled for half a day, but after realizing that Hushi was really angry and was refusing to acknowledge him, he couldn't but help drop its small head, its antennae softly drooping. All of a sudden, the antennae on its head moved, and looking around at the mess in the room, it lifted its arms in the air, waving its small hands. Soon, everything was once again categorized, all neatly placed back on the shelves. Dandan looked at the shelves for a long while, letting out a giggle, and just when it was about to show Hushi so she could praise it, it noticed her staring at the 8 jade boxes flying around the room with anxiousness. The antennae on its small head swayed, and suddenly understanding, it waved a claw in the air. Soon after, the light surrounding the 8 jade boxes flickered, and with a whoosh, they flew towards Hushi, abruptly stopping in front of her. Hushi stared blankly, confused about what had just happened, when Dandan used its small and short legs to run to her, pulled a corner of her clothes and boasted, "Mother, you see, I've tidied it all up. I also helped Mother catch these disobedient boxes. Mother, aren't I awesome? Don't get angry again, okay?" Hushi touched its small head, praising it. Seeing it roll about in happiness, she couldn't help but laugh. Whether it's in an egg or this unknown shape, this little guy behaves like a 5-year-old child. Hushi picked up one of the jade boxes, first trying to open it using spiritual power, and when that failed, she used her divine sense to probe it. Unexpectedly, as soon as her divine sense touched the jade box surrounded by light, it was as if she had used a key to open a lock. The light around the jade box disappeared, and it then heavily landed on Hushi's hands. Seeing Hushi's puzzled expression, Dandan's antennae perched upright on its small head, and with a crisp and clear, childlike voice it said, "Because Mother is the owner of Shumi Palace, these jade boxes recognize Mother's divine sense imprint. Other people have no way to open these jade boxes." Hushi suddenly understood, and collecting the remaining 7 jade boxes, she hurriedly opened them. Soon, the boxes were emptied, and everything inside was arranged neatly in front of Hushi. A hard-shelled egg the size of a chicken egg, 2 black-colored pills with unknown properties, and 5 jade slips. Hushi sat cross-legged on the ground, examining the things in front of her, unsure of what to start with. She beckoned Dandan over. "Dandan, do you know what these things are?" Dandan scratched its antennae with a small, stubby hand, confusion across its face. However, when it noticed the jade slips, its eyes lit up like it suddenly recalled something. Running over, it pulled one of the jade slips from the pile, handing it to Hushi. "Mother, I remembered. Grandpa Shumi said that he left Mother some guides. He told me to tell Mother that after the Spirit Firmament Palace door opened, to first look at this. Yes, it's this jade slip." Hushi's eyes shone, and taking the jade slip, her mind quickly sank into it. Chapter 139 New Harvest Shumi Palace, also known as Montuoshan Mansion, was created by a Shumi Taoist using a myriad of the world's spiritual objects. Refined over many years, it has now become a divine artifact. Since the beginning, when the Miluo and Xianluo continents were formed, there were rumors. These rumors said that whoever possessed Shumi Palace obtained heavenly law, and that whoever obtained heavenly law would rule all lands under heaven. Therefore, the person who inherits this divine artifact must be descended from a divine bloodline. They must harbor virtuous thoughts and beneficence towards common people, otherwise, they will be devoured whole by heavenly law itself. Shumi Palace is divided into 9 palaces and 81 doors. The 9 palaces are Spirit Firmament, Black Firmament, Green Firmament, Blue Firmament, Scarlet Firmament, Jade Firmament, Amethyst Firmament, Highest Firmament, and Divine Firmament. Each palace has 9 doors, and each of the 9 doors have a set location. But if the 9 doors open all together, a formation will be activated and the 9 doors will disappear, changing into a palace instead. Hushi continued to read, discovering that in addition to storing treasures in Spirit Firmament Palace, the biggest feature here is the time stagnation. Of course, this kind of time stagnation could only be useful for storing foods as it was unable to be used for cultivation, so its only function is keeping food fresh. When Hushi went to look at the information detailing the other palaces, she found that the text was covered by a layer of white mist, causing it to be unreadable. It seems that the information will only be readable once the palaces are unlocked. Moreover, looking at the meaning of this guide, it appeared that each palace served a different purpose. Inside each palace there are probably more treasures concealed, so once all of the palaces are open, there would be a large sum of money, enough that it could make one very wealthy. Unsatisfied by the lack of information, Hushi put the guide down and picked up the remaining jade slips. In these 4 jade slips, 3 contain the same type of content. They were ancient records from the Shumi Taoist, called the All Living Things Record. The All Living Things Record was divided into sections documenting spiritual plants, spiritual beasts, and spiritual tools. Everything that the Shumi Taoist had seen throughout their life was described inside, and instead of vague details, each characteristic, as well as the locations of where they could be found, was documented with great care. It included information about all kinds of rare treasures, rare birds, and unusual beasts. There was even a clear image of each thing accompanying the jade slip. Wasn't the All Living Things record like a version of the Compendium of Materia Medica? 1. Hushi had been afraid that because she herself is a newbie in this different world, that she wouldn't be able to recognize or understand anything and be considered a country bumpkin. Now she doesn't need to be worried. By the time Hushi had reached the last jade slip, she was positively overjoyed, her previously neutral expression transforming into a brilliant smile. Recorded in the last jade slip is the knowledge on how to refine pills, written by Old Man Shumi himself. Called the Overflowing Cauldron Pill Scripture, it lists the prescription for every kind of precious pill. In her previous life, Hushi was known as an accomplished doctor with excellent medical expertise, so when she arrived in this strange cultivation world, of course she wanted to learn how to refine pills. But unfortunately in Miluo continent, becoming a doctor is a scarce profession. The art of pill refining is secretly passed down between family members, or between master and disciple. If you were able to find a book regarding pill refining at the market, describing its basic foundation, it would be priceless. And yet here this jade slip regarding pill refining was found, listing in detail all kinds of medicine ingredients and prescription combinations. Combinations detailing the choosing and usage, how to pair them, contradictory medicines, and even how to refine fire attribute and temperature control. So once Hushi saw this, she exclaimed in joy, "Mother, I'm hungry. How about you roast this egg for me to eat?" Hushi, immersed in the overflowing cauldron pill scripture, extricated herself with reluctance as Dandan's eager voice reached her ears. Hushi turned her head in surprise, and seeing Dandan holding something round, she couldn't stop black lines from forming on her forehead. "Isn't that the nameless egg from one of the jade boxes? You're not allowed to eat that. I'll go out now to find food for you. So behave and take good care of the egg for me. If you dare eat the egg, don't ever think about eating anything in the future." 1 Materia medica equals Latin for medical material. Here it refers to a collection of medical books. For more infos. Chapter 140. Seeing Zhu Ke again, what a joke. This is a treasure Old Man Shumi left. Maybe one day it would hatch into a divine beast, so if she let Dandan eat it, wouldn't she cry to death with regret? Dandan blinked its big eyes towards Hushi. "I won't eat the egg. Mother, how about you take me out so we can eat together? I'll be obedient." Hushi's brows raised. Staring at its eye-catching appearance, the corner of her mouth couldn't help but raise, and shaking her head she said, "For the time being, no. There are a lot of bad people outside. If they catch and cook you, what would you do? You better stay in the space for now. I will bring you delicious food." Old Man Shumi had said that Dandan's identity will trigger greed and desire in humans. Her current strength is too weak. How could she dare to casually bring this little guy out? Once it heard that bad people would want to catch him, Dandan's small antennae trembled with fear, leaving it no choice but to quit asking about going out. Feeling aggrieved, it held the egg as it pitifully said, "Then mother, you should quickly bring in food for me to eat." Dandan hungry. After saying that, its small face rubbed against the eggshell. Hushi has good vision and noticed that when Dandan rubbed against the egg, a faint light seemed to be emitted from within. Putting aside thoughts of the egg, she picked up the 2 strange pills and sniffed them. Yet without being able to figure out what they were for, and not wanting to randomly eat them, she tossed them back into a jade box, deciding to temporarily leave them for now. Withdrawing from her space, Hushi let out a long sigh of relief, her mood brighter than it had been since she had awoken. As expected, now that her strength is increasing and she finally has the ability to defend herself, she is at last able to feel a sense of security. Touching her grumbling stomach, Hushi got up and walked out of the room. Yet as she reached the inner courtyard, she stared blankly as before her eyes is a gorgeous palace with an exquisite garden on display. Just a moment ago when she was inside the room, she had noted the unfamiliar decorations and furnishings, but it wasn't until this moment, seeing this luxurious and noble residence, that she felt that her intuition was right. When she was losing consciousness after being attacked by the assassins from Drought Demon Organization, she vaguely remembered seeing a familiar face and hearing a grave voice in her ears that caused her to feel relieved. "Nan Gongyu, that must have been Nan Gongyu." Hushi covered her chest with a hand and felt her heart palpitating incessantly, a grateful expression slowly emerging in her eyes. If she's not mistaken, only Nan Gongyu has the Yuanyang fruit, and only Nan Gongyu knew how to unseal her muddled dantian. Moreover, when she was being chased, the imprint on her hairpin protected her from a fatal strike, so Nan Gongyu certainly would have known of her situation. So he saved her life in the nick of time, as well as helping her unseal her dantian. Thinking of this, Hushi's footsteps accelerated. At this very moment she was eagerly wanting to see Nan Gongyu. She didn't want to delay meeting him for another second. Looking for someone to ask for directions, Hushi had barely made it to the courtyard's gate when she heard noises from outside. The voice of the man was very familiar to Hushi as it belonged to Bai Hu, that freeloader who would come to her courtyard every day for food and drink. But that woman's voice, at first Hushi thought it was unfamiliar, yet as she continued listening, she felt it was somewhat familiar. Listening to them, she heard Bai Hu's voice cold with disapproval. "Zhu Ke, don't cause trouble again. This is Master's order. Don't tell me you won't even obey Master's orders?" "Zhu Ke? Zhu Ke." Hushi suddenly realized that no wonder she felt this woman's voice was unfamiliar yet familiar, and that she thought it was faintly annoying. So as it turns out, it was that arrogant woman who claimed she came to present pills to Hushi by her master's order, yet who tried to kill her instead. Saying all this, the person who saved her must really be Nan Gongyu. Chapter 141. What happened to Nan Gongyu? Hushi was just about to push the door open, when Zhu Ke's sharp voice came through the thick iron gate. "Bai Hu, if you still regard me as a partner considering we grew up together, then step aside. Otherwise, I will be forced to be impolite to you. Today I must slaughter that slut." Bai Hu immediately retorted. "You heard Master's words before he lost consciousness. She is Master's personally chosen princess. From now on, she is also our master. Even if I blamed her for causing harm to Master's orders are not something we can ignore." "Princess? Harmed Master?" Hushi, whose hands were about to slightly press on the door, froze, bewilderment appearing in her eyes. Zhu Ke was silent for a minute. Then when she next spoke, it was in a voice sharp with anger. "Bai Hu, don't forget, Master's current condition is due to that slut harming him. If it wasn't for him saving her, how could Master still remain unconscious? I'm not able to move out of the way. Otherwise, don't blame me if I use poison against you. Zhu Ke, don't cause trouble without a reason. Even if you use poison, just based on your current cultivation base, how could that injure me?" Bai Hu's voice was filled with exhaustion and annoyance. What's more, Qinglong has suggested that perhaps she'll be able to cure Master. After all, Qinglong personally witnessed her curing Ouyang Haoshuan's illness. He definitely wouldn't lie about something like this and jeopardize Master's safety. Moreover, have you forgotten what's behind this door? Bai Hu's voice became cold, sharp like the edge of a sword. No one is allowed to enter Master's bedroom, including us 8 trusted subordinates. Whoever enters without permission will be killed, no excuse. The only one who is allowed to enter is Miss Naylan. Don't tell me that you still don't understand what this means? Zhu Ke's expression blanked for a moment. Then she suddenly laughed loudly, her voice full of resentment and loathing. "You believe that trash that's unable to use spiritual power will be able to cure Master? You don't want to listen to me even though I'm a 5th-ranked doctor, and an official member of the Doctors Association. Then could you give me your word that you can definitely cure Master?" Bai Hu calmly asked. Zhu Ke hesitated before she responded. Then she abruptly raised her voice. "If I'm unable to cure Master, don't tell me that that immature and inexperienced girl is able to do it. Aren't you and Qinglong being muddle-headed? The two of you believing that slut? Do you really want to kill Master?" Hushi's complexion had become extremely unsightly listening till here, and not wanting to hear anymore, she pushed the door open, her sharp eyes focusing on Bai Hu. "What happened to Nan Gongyu? They said she harmed Nan Gongyu. In the end, what did they mean?" Bai Hu and Zhu Ke were shocked, Bai Hu blurting out, "Miss Naylan, you since when have you been standing behind the door?" He is an expert on gold core stage. Yet he was unaware that there had been an ordinary person listening from behind the door. Hushi didn't care about answering his question, and instead, with a calm expression on her face asked, "What happened to Nan Gongyu? Injured too heavily? Bring me to see him immediately." Hushi couldn't describe her mood at this moment. It's like there was a claw incessantly scratching at her heart, painful and irritating. Obviously, he is only a stranger she met by chance, but once she heard that he was seriously injured, her good mood disappeared without a trace, leaving only worry and a trace of unfamiliar fear remaining. Fear that something will happen to him. Bai Hu had no time to answer before Zhu Ke screamed. Slut, it was you that harmed Master. If you hadn't seduced Master, his condition wouldn't be so life-threatening. You should just go die, you slut. Chapter 142. Overconfident in front of an expert barely finished speaking. A blade made of wind condensed on her palm, resolutely shooting towards Hushi. This time, her attack used all of her strength as she was no longer holding back. Swearing an oath to herself that she would willingly risk her life and be blamed by Master, she wanted to behead this slut on the spot. Zhu Ke, don't! Bai Hu exclaimed in alarm, a protective barrier immediately condensing on his palm to protect Hushi. However, Zhu Ke was closer to her. Without checking, he knew that it was too late to save her. His complexion couldn't help but changing. The wind blade whistled as it shot towards Hushi with deadly killing intent, sweeping up pebbles and dirt in its wake. Hushi calmly watched the wind blade approach her, neither retreating or avoiding it. Instead, a corner of her mouth slowly lifted into a ridiculing smile. Just when the wind blade was about to reach her, Hushi suddenly raised her hand. The white bone whip clutched in her fist since who knows when. The bone whip lifted slightly, and in a split second a faint golden blue light flickered, striking the wind blade and splitting it in two in the blink of an eye. The wind blade swept past her sides, raising strands of her soft black hair, and finally disappearing without a trace. Standing unharmed in the middle of the gale, Hushi sneered at Zhu Quebec, by whose mouth opened wide with shock, astonishment plastered across his face. With white skin resembling snow, eyes like brilliant jewels, and delicate facial features, the girl standing gracefully under the sunshine was just like a fairy that had descended to the mortal world. Her body didn't have any obvious spiritual power, but from her action a moment ago, Bai Hu could clearly sense spiritual power being used. Moreover, Bai Hu had never seen this spiritual power before. It wasn't one of the single spiritual root powers of metal, wood, water, fire, or earth. Yet neither was it one of the common variations of spiritual roots. How could this be? Did Nalan Hushi have a cultivation base or not? Compared to Bai Hu's astonished expression, Zhu Ke had quickly shaken off her shock. And with her face abruptly distorting, her eyes bloodshot red, she fiercely glared at Hushi as if she wanted to tear her apart. It's you who stole my cultivation base. Slut, it's you who stole my cultivation base, right? Return my cultivation base. Hushi looked at Zhu Ke with her expression as cold as ice, her eyes mocking. Oh, I see, so your cultivation base has dropped from early gold core stage to mid-meridian stage. No wonder that wind blade strike was like a gentle breeze, completely lacking in power. Hearing that caused Zhu Ke to immediately become crazy and hysterically rush towards Hushi. Nalan Hushi, you stole my cultivation base, you must die. Even if I'm only mid-meridian stage, I'll still be able to kill you. I will dismember your body into 1,000 pieces. As Zhu Ke shouted, she withdrew one of her handmade poison powders, fiercely tossing it at Hushi. One must know that this poison powder was made when she was still a gold core stage martial artist, so even a martial artist of the same rank would be somewhat fearful to come into contact with it. While Nalan Hushi was someone who had only recently advanced from the chi refining stage, so how would she be able to withstand it? Once this poison powder touched a person's body, their skin will itch as it rots, inch by inch, not stopping until they finally turn into a stinking corpse, their bones dried up and their flesh like liquid. Nalan Hushi, you harmed me, so if I can't dismember your body, I will instead break your bones and scatter the ashes of your corpse. Until then, I cannot avenge the hatred in my heart. As the powder spread, Hushi sniffed the air and could smell a particular stench. A corner of her mouth lifted into a cold smile, and sneering she said, unexpectedly, you dare use poison in front of your ancestor. You're practically playing with an axe at the doorway of Lu Ban's house. 1. Overestimating your capabilities like this. 1. It is said that Lu Ban, influenced by the fact that the leaves of kogon grass are shaped like the teeth of a saw, invented the saw, and that he constructed a bird out of bamboo strips that could fly in the air for 3 days and 3 nights without falling. Liu Ban had a number of inventions, which is the reason why he is worshipped by Chinese people as the founder of carpentry as a trade. To play with an axe at the doorway to Liu Ban's house is, of course, indicative of not knowing one's own limitation. Chapter 143, Princess? What rubbish is this? Barely pausing after speaking, Hushi's hand was already in motion as she tossed out a handful of silver poison at Zhu Kei's approaching poison powder. What happened next caused the people present to become stunned. The blackish-gray poison powder and the silver powder were like nemesis meeting midair. When they collided, it was like time stopped as they both hovered in the sky, forming an ash-gray barrier that caused everyone's hair to stand on end. Subsequently, Hushi lightly brandished the bone whip in her hand, and strong spiritual power erupted, knocking aside the poison barrier. The mixed poisons then, without pause, flew straight towards Zhu Quebec. Zhu Kei's eyes opened wide with fright, horror expressed on her face. When she threw the poison powder, she had been utterly confident that Hushi would die, so unfortunately, she hadn't made any defense preparations. So when the poisons headed towards her, she was completely caught off guard. The tip of her nose smelled a familiar stench, causing Zhu Kei's body to shake all over and despair to surge within her heart. The next moment, a protective barrier appeared in front of Zhu Kei, in a flash obstructing the poisons from reaching her. The poison powder and the silver powder then gently fluttered to the ground. After barely touching the ground, the silver powder began to evaporate, the poison powder soon following and also disappearing without a trace. However, what is most horrifying of all is that the ground where the silver powder landed, there were burnt holes remaining. The is a so-called divine medical poison. After committing a crime, it will naturally evaporate and disappear without a trace. Not even a hair will remain. Compared to Zhu Kei's handmade poison, this melting bone silver powder was 1,000 times more formidable. Previously, Hushi didn't have any spiritual power, so she had no way to infuse the melted bone poison into a martial artist's body, but it will be different from now on. She still has many hideous poisons in her hands waiting to be improved, so if any people dared to provoke her, she absolutely wouldn't show mercy. Bai Hu saw the complete evaporation, the corroded ground due to the silver powder, and horror bubbled forth in his heart. Although these poisons didn't injure him, if they were used against an ordinary low-level martial artist, it would be absolutely fatal. In just a few days, Miss Naelin's strength has increased to such a degree. No wonder to her, Master is so. As he raised his head, his eyes that looked towards Hushi were filled with fear and respect. Yet in the end, Zhu Kei is their comrade, someone they grew up with. Princess, Zhu Kei is presumptuous and intended to attack Princess. She ought to be punished. But even if she's guilty, she shouldn't die. Please, Princess, spare her life. Princess. Hushi's brows wrinkled. What sort of name is this? Just as she was about to open her mouth and ask, Zhu Kei, who was standing behind Bai Hu, once again went mad, wanting to rush towards Hushi. You think with just your little cultivation base that you can really compete with me? Before I was only momentarily tricked by you. This time I must kill. Zhu Kei had barely finished her threat when Bai Hu lifted his hand and released a powerful burst of spiritual pressure towards her. Zhu Kei's complexion changed, and quivering all over, she spat out a mouthful of blood with a puff. In disbelief, she raised her head and stared at Bai Hu. You go so far as to injure me for an unknown slut. Good. Bai Hu, you saw that I was harmed by this woman and lost my cultivation base, so now you want to push me further into a pit of despair too? Chapter 144. A life close to death at this moment. The annoyance is clear on Bai Hu's face as he looked at Zhu Kei, the light in his eyes as cold as ice. Zhu Kei, you've crossed the line. I will report your conduct and deeds of today to Master. Wait until Master wakes up. You should think about how you'll explain this. Finished speaking, he no longer paid attention to Zhu Kei, instead looking towards Hushi. Princess, Qing Long requested that I immediately bring you to see Master once you were awake. If you would follow me? Hushi frowned, her worry for Nangongyu her main focus. How's Nangongyu now? Master fell into a coma late last night. And up until now there has been no signs he would awaken. Every doctor in the manor, including Zhu Ke, has examined him. But as of yet we've been completely unable to do anything for him. We're currently helpless. Hushi promptly said, bring me to him. Compared to Nangongyu's safety, settling accounts with Zhu Ke and caring about being called princess were insignificant worries. Moreover, when she thought of using melting bone poison to kill Zhu Ke, she now realized it would be too cheap a death for her. If Zhu Ke tried to provoke her again, she has many amusing games prepared, all waiting to play with her till the end. Bai Hu quickly walked ahead, leading the way. When he passed by Zhu Ke, his cold gaze noticed the resentment on her face, so he just helplessly shook his head. All of Nangongyu's subordinates were aware of Zhu Ke's feelings towards Master. They had even openly or secretly advised her. However, for her own selfish desires, she had disregarded Master's orders. This Zhu Ke, it seems like she wouldn't be staying long in Hell King Manor. There was quite a distance to the place where Nangongyu cultivates, and the whole way there, Hushi kept trying to remember what happened last night. Yet no matter how hard she tried, she has no impressions of what had occurred. Sneaking a glance at Bai Hu from the side, she saw that his face was taut due to his displeasure. With his icy expression, he no longer resembled the enthusiastic gossiper she had come to know at her courtyard. Hushi could clearly sense that his discontent and resentment was aimed at her, because it was because of her that Nangongyu was unconscious. Was it Nangongyu who saved me yesterday? Bai Hu's footsteps slightly paused, a corner of his mouth rising in a faint curve. Yes, princess. All of them had personally seen Hushi's dying appearance yesterday. If Master hadn't done everything he could to save her, it's likely that Hushi wouldn't have been able to survive, let alone have her strength rise to such a degree. However, because of her, Master is now in a coma, his life close to death. This resulted in Bai Hu unable to do anything but hate Hushi. If she didn't exist, Master surely would have been able to withstand his illness like previously, without it being so life-threatening this time. Princess again? Hushi frowned. I'm not your princess. Bai Hu snorted, his tone formal and distant. I apologize, but this is Master's command. Even if we're unwilling, we can only obey. Since Master said that you are to be called princess, then you are to be called princess. To hell with it. Nangongyu said that I'm to be called princess, so I'm called princess? Does no one ask her opinion? Furthermore, why on earth has Nangongyu commanded his subordinates to call her princess? Has his brain short-circuited? But before Hushi could refute Bai Hu, they had already arrived at Nangongyu's recuperation room, so she could only quickly focus on the task at hand. Standing in front of Nangongyu's room there was a crowd of people that included Qinglong, as well as 3 noticeable men. Next to Qinglong, there is a tall and thin man dressed in black, his eyes bright and sharp. With a temperament somewhat similar to Qinglong, Hushi had already met 3 of Nangongyu's personal bodyguards and knew they were named after the 4 divine beasts, Qinglong, Bai Hu, and Zhu Ke, so then this is probably Xian Wu. Chapter 145. Cold Poison. Standing beside Xian Wu is a young man dressed in a moon-white brocade robe, his features bright and handsome, while his expression resembled an ice sculpture. His imposing manner gave off a warning, keeping strangers from coming close. Hushi's intuition faintly told her that this person is more powerful than Qinglong. His temper seemed to be very cold and indifferent, yet she had no idea who he is. When her gaze fell on the third person, she startled slightly. She has actually met this person before, yet he didn't leave a deep impression. He was the auctioneer at Gluttonous House Wuyu. Wuyu noticed Hushi's surprise as she looked at him, a corner of his mouth raising into a smile. Serene eyes with hidden depths made it impossible for people to guess what he is thinking. Qinglong watched Hushi arrive, and without greeting her he immediately said, "You come with me." In a flash, the door to the room was pushed open and Hushi followed him in. After barely entering the room, her senses were assaulted by a blast of heat. Fine beads of sweat started to form on her forehead, and furrowing her eyebrows, she quickly used a small amount of water spiritual power to resist the heat. Only then was she able to feel comfortable. Qinglong saw Hushi's body produce pure spiritual power, and his eyes slightly revealed his astonishment as he explained. The cold poison in Master's body has begun to enter his heart. We have tried everything we could think of to suppress it, but so far it's only helped a little. Walking around a corner, they came upon a large bed. Smoke filled the room, raising the temperature, and lying on the bed with the smoke wafting around him, is Nangongyu. At her first glance of Nangongyu, Hushi's eyes suddenly narrowed. The man on the bed is only wearing a white silk robe, and with his hair undone, eyes tightly closed, his handsome appearance resembled a jade sculpture from afar. The inside of the room is clearly burning hot, yet his face didn't have the slightest trace of color. Instead, his white complexion seemed to be frozen and transparent. Hushi had never seen Nangongyu like this before. In her impressions of him, Nangongyu is always elegant, filled with demonic charm, a pervert and completely ostentatious. But the Nangongyu of this moment looks so fragile, as if he could break with just one touch. Without waiting for Qinglong to present her, Hushi quickly stepped forward and grabbed Nangongyu's wrist. So cold. Hushi's hand shivered slightly. She is obviously holding a person's wrist, but it felt like she was holding a piece of jade just removed from the freezer. And this kind of cold, as she is touching it, she had the illusion it was permeating into her bones. Hushi focused, and using her spiritual power to slowly penetrate his pulse, she began to examine his body. After maintaining this position for longer than it took to burn a stick of incense, her eyebrows started wrinkling tighter and tighter. Qinglong's expression as he watched her was anxious, like he was slowly being burnt. Several times he wanted to interrupt Hushi and inquire about his master's condition, but he was afraid that disturbing her treatment would be harmful to his master. Just when his patience had almost reached his limit, Hushi finally released her hand. Yet the wrinkle between her eyebrows still didn't loosen. Qinglong quickly asked, "How's master? Can he be cured?" If even this genius Dr. Shiyu that cured Ouyang Haoshuan is helpless, then they would have no other choice but to request help from an elder from the Doctors Association. And that would be Zhu Kei's master. But if this were to happen, then master's situation would be known by other people, and at that time, Hell King Manor would no longer be able to maintain its transcendent position. This might also lead to master attracting a fatal disaster. Thinking about this, Qinglong's hand that was gripping his sword firmly tightened, his eyes gazing at Hushi unconsciously filling with a trace of hope. Chapter 146. Treatment Plan. Hushi pondered for a moment, then slowly said, "Nangongyu's illness, how old was he when this began to attack?" Qinglong promptly replied, "This illness has accompanied Master since he began to successfully cultivate spiritual power, and he became able to draw vital energy into his body. Every 7th day of the 7th month, it will flare up, attacking the blood throughout his body and causing it to freeze, while his meridians become stiff and frail. This situation lasts for 3 days, and only then does it slowly improve, so that by the 5th day, Master will be completely restored like usual." Hearing what Qinglong said, Hushi's face slightly revealed her surprise. Turning her head, she looked all around the room, then said, "Every year when Nangongyu's illness flares, does he use a strong yang object to suppress the cold poison in his body?" She pointed at the steam rising and curling out from a high-quality fire crystal stone. "Not this thing or yuanyang fruit. These aren't enough by far to suppress the cold poison in his body." "How did you know?" Qinglong blurted out, his face full of surprise as an enthusiastic light burst in his eyes. "Yes, every year when it nears the 7th month, Master will enter the flame cave for seclusion. Only the yang from the flame cave is able to suppress the cold energy in Master's body." Qinglong was just about to explain why Nangongyu hadn't yet entered the flame cave, but noticed Hushi nodding, the realization on her face as she said, "I've heard about the flame cave. Located in the center of the cave, there is heavenly yang fire. It is said that it's able to entirely burn all living things on the world. If it's the flame cave, then it would indeed be possible to suppress Nangongyu's cold poison." Of course, this wasn't what she had heard. Rather, she knew all this from before, when she had read the All Living Things record. But Hushi frowned, her expression slowly becoming complex as she looked at Nan Gongyu on the bed. The fire element in the flame cave is violent and extreme, even to Nan Gongyu's body. After entering for so long, the body will start to suffer from irreversible damage. Therefore, for him to enter the flame cave, it is necessary his body is in peak condition, or else he would be unable to bear the intense yang fire. But in order to save me, this guy, in order to save her, did he go so far because he didn't treasure his life? However, they're both just strangers coming together by chance, so why? What did he really want? The expressions on her face continuously changed between guilt and gratefulness, while there was even one of heartache. When she started feeling doubt, for a moment she even forgot to maintain the water's spiritual power, causing her to nearly be unable to stand the impact from the heat wave. Qinglong's face revealed his rapture. His eyes no longer glared at Hushi with condemnation and doubt, rather, they were full of hope. He repeatedly nodded as he said, "What Princess said is true. Every year near the 7th month, Master will enter seclusion, adjusting his cultivation base and strength to be the best they can be. Once the 7th day arrives, he withdraws to the flame cave. Outsiders think it's for seclusion, but just as Princess said, every time Master leaves the flame cave, the injuries to his meridians and dantian increase. Each year we all worry for Master, wondering if he'll be able to hold on or not." Pausing for a while, he then slowed his voice and asked in a whisper, "Princess, do you have a treatment method?" Hushi didn't answer. Instead, she lightly tapped the bed with her finger as she pondered. After a long while, she frowned and said, "For now, I'm unable to think of a method to solve the root of the problem. But I have a plan to temporarily alleviate his illness. We just need to make it like he's cultivating in the flame cave to get him through this difficult time. But this plan is only an idea. I've never implemented it on other patients, and my treatment plan is completely different of that from your doctor, so I'll leave it up to you all to decide if you're willing to follow it or not." Chapter 147. "I will definitely cure you," Qinglong promptly asked. "May I ask Princess to describe the details of the treatment plan?" Hushi nodded, then listed out a series of herb names: jade marrow mushroom, 7 red cloud lotus, heavenly spirit fruit, congeal grass. "You only need to find these herbs, that would do." Qinglong's face immediately showed doubt when he heard what was said. Congeal grass has an extremely strong cold attribute. If it's taken alone, taking too much can cause the cold poison to flare in an ordinary martial artist, and they would lose their life. Currently Master's cold poison has flared up. How can you? Hushi lifted her eyes, her gaze indifferent as she looked at him and lightly laughed. That said, my treatment plan is different compared to other doctors, so the medicinal ingredients I use will also be different. If you don't have any confidence in it, you may refuse to employ it." Qinglong startled, momentarily hesitant as he requested, "Please allow this subordinate to discuss this with the others." Hushi nodded. "You had best decide as soon as possible though. With Nan Gongyu's condition it cannot be delayed. In another 6 hours, I can't be certain that I'll be able to save his life." With anxiousness on his face, Qinglong's figure flashed as he instantly disappeared from the room. Now, only Nan Gongyu and Hushi remained in the room resembling a sauna. Hushi quietly looked at the unconscious Nan Gongyu, and after a moment of hesitation, she couldn't help but extend her hand, softly caressing his face. Nan Gongyu's slender eyebrows arched gracefully towards his temples, while the bridge of his nose is high and straight. He has thin and finely shaped lips, and long eyelashes that gently fluttered, casting faint silhouettes against his cheeks. His skin is snow white, almost transparent, and under his thin skin it is almost possible to see faint blue-green veins. His aura fragile yet beautiful. Hushi will always remember that when those ink-black eyes were open, they looked at all lands under heaven with arrogance, displaying a willfulness to all. How they burned like fire, with serene and hidden depths. "Nan Gongyu, the colding object, was it your own blood?" She softly whispered in his ear. "You and I obviously only met by chance, so why do you go to such lengths for me?" From when she was a child till now, if anyone around her was good to her, it was in order to take advantage of her, squeezing her for everything she was worth. So much so that finally, The partner who had braved fire and water with her, who had risked life and limb with her countless times, Wuxia, betrayed her. Such experiences had caused Hushi unable to believe anyone, unable to open her heart and accept anyone. However, Nan Gongyu's conduct and deeds were making her originally sealed heart crack. On one hand, she wants to believe him, while on the other hand, she is afraid she is being taken advantage of. In any case, I will definitely cure you, Hushi murmured. Even if it was just you being kind, I will cure your illness completely. In fact, Nan Gongyu's current condition isn't that severe, so she is utterly certain that she can use ordinary prescriptions to suppress what ails him. Unfortunately, what made Hushi afraid is that she had used countless methods to check Nan Gongyu's body, but she still couldn't find the source of the cold energy within him. Obviously there is no source, and also no sign of poison, but with the passage of time his body is gradually becoming colder, so much so that even his dantian is slowly showing signs of freezing. This caused Hushi to feel puzzled. Apparently she wouldn't be able to find the cause of Nan Gongyu's illness in such a short amount of time, so currently the only thing to do is alleviate his symptoms, putting the discussion on hold until later, and helping him pass this stage first. Qinglong went outside to inform Wuxia and the others the details of Hushi's diagnoses and her proposed treatment plan. Chapter 148. Sacrificing your lives. As he finished speaking, Zhu Ke, who had just rushed over, let out a sharp protest. Qinglong, is there something wrong with your head? Een congeal grass is a cold een plant. That slut wants to use een congeal grass and deliberately harm Master's life, yet you believe her. Zhu Ke's voice became sluggish, then she abruptly shouted loudly, I can't cure Master's illness, but my teacher can. She's a third-generation elder of the Doctors' Association. Any incurable disease will completely recover by her hands. As long as we invite my teacher to come here, she will certainly be able to cure Master. As Zhu Ke's voice faded, Wuxia raised his hand, and a sudden attack of strong wind knocked her to the ground. Zhu Ke cut a sorry figure as she tumbled about, a trickle of blood flowing from a corner of her mouth. Her complexion was deathly pale as she glared at the people around her, her cold eyes containing fierce anger and hatred. Wuxia coldly snorted, his sword-like gaze thrust towards her. Zhu Ke, don't forget our oath. Anyone who leaks Master's condition is committing an act of betrayal, suffering heaven's punishment. Even if the person you leaked it to is your teacher, it's still the same. Zhu Ke's body trembled under the force of Wuxian's power. When she remembered that she was now only so weak because of that slut Nalan Hushi, the resentment in her heart fiercely blazed, burning ever more vigorously. You're all a group of idiots. To actually be played with by an unknown woman and run around in circles. It's clear that my teacher's ability is the one thing that will most likely be able to make Master recover, and yet none of you believe in me or my teacher, instead believing in that slut. Zhu Ke sneered as she laughed loudly, her face distorting with a sinister smile. Coupled with the scars on her face, it looked terrible and ugly. In this case, this slut can't cure Master's illness, no. Instead this slut wants to make Master take een congeal grass, so she clearly wants to kill Master. If Master suffers a mishap because of your decision, then you will all be at fault. You will all have to apologize by sacrificing your lives for your offenses. Qinglong and the others looked at each other in dismay, their expressions revealing their indecision. After all, if Hushi harbored malicious intentions, it's likely her treatment will harm Nan Gongyu's life, but if they didn't use Hushi's treatment plan, they were still helpless. Did they really need to request help from the Doctors' Association? That would be introducing a potential source of future trouble, and if Master was awake he definitely wouldn't approve of this decision. In the end, what should they do? You said that if I can't cure Nan Gongyu, they must sacrifice their lives, so then if I can cure him. Suddenly, a clear and distinct woman's voice sounded from inside the door, causing everyone to immediately look towards the direction the voice came from. Before their eyes, Hushi, disguised as a youth, unhurriedly walked out from inside the room. Although she is wearing men's clothes, without anything else to disguise her appearance, All it took was one glance for everyone to be able to see that she is clearly a woman. Her exquisite, snow-white skin glistened under the sunshine, and her hair is moist due to perspiration, causing some of it to stick to her cheeks and border her picturesque features. With her bright eyes and white teeth, it made her resemble a fairy born amongst the dawn mist, so beautiful that it stunned and dazzled everyone. Everyone's heart became distracted as they looked at her, secretly thinking, no wonder the always cold-hearted and emotionless master treats Miss Nayland differently compared to anyone else. Chapter 149. Make a bet. But when Zhu Kei saw Hushi looking this way, she could only feel the jealousy in her heart burning. Her glaring eyes resembled a dead fish's eyes as they protruded out, and as she fiercely focused on Hushi, the scars on her face kept trembling. Sucking in a deep breath, she spoke in a stern voice. Nayland Hushi, I haven't asked what vicious thoughts you have in mind, but since Master's cold poison has flared up and you want to use congeal grass on him, you clearly want to harm Master's life. Don't think your flowery words that can deceive Qing Long and the others can fool me. I'm a 5th-ranked doctor acknowledged by the Doctors Association. With just your 3-legged cat's ability, you dare to say that you're more powerful than me. Hushi sneered, her gaze as she looked at Zhu Kei full of contempt and disdain. Such big talk, Zhu Quebec. You should wait until you've healed the scars on your face before you say that to me again. The expression on Zhu Kei's face abruptly stiffened, and she subconsciously covered her face with a hand. From the moment she saw Master carrying this slut back, she had forgotten everything else, her mind muddled by her burning jealousy. For a while she didn't have the time to care about the veil on her face falling off, but now, thinking of other people seeing her ugly appearance, fear started to appear in her eyes. For a woman like Zhu Kei who wished to appear beautiful to everyone, her appearance meant everything to her. She especially feared appearing so ugly like this in front of Master. Zhu Kei's features twisted, the expression in her eyes full of hostility as she looked at Hushi. Slut you. You haven't yet realized that the scar on your face is growing bigger and turning blacker? Hushi indifferently interrupted her. To tell you the truth, one day that scar will spread to cover your whole face, emitting an unpleasant smell. It must feel wonderful. But aren't you a 5th-ranked doctor? I believe that you will certainly be able to cure it. Zhu Kei's eyes suddenly widened with her alarm, incredulousness filling her face. No. She totally didn't believe Hushi's words. There is no such poison in this world, but the way this slut said it, as if she was making a solemn vow, what if by chance it was true? Hushi ignored Zhu Kei's panic, instead restraining her expression as she said, let's return back to the point, about how I can use congeal grass and the other medicines I mentioned, making Nangong Yu awaken and helping him get through his illness this time. Impossible. Zhu Kei blurted out. Congeal grass is extremely cold. It will only increase Master's symptoms. How could cure you Master's illness? Oh, then since you don't believe me, how about we make a bet? Hushi gently played with the jade ornament hanging at her waist, smirking as she said, if I can't awaken Nangong Yu, I'll accept your punishment. Zhu Kei promptly raised her voice and roared. If you can't cure Master, I shall cut your face and use poison to corrode the skin all over your body. A sword-like coldness flashed in Hushi's eyes, and she slowly said, I have no hesitations to agreeing, but what if I cure Nangong Yu? Zhu Kei blanked for a moment, then sneered as she coldly laughed. Using these medicines you've listed you will absolutely be unable to awaken Master. You're just raving like a lunatic. If you're truly able to cure Master, I will discard my cultivation base and henceforth no longer be a doctor. Will this do? Hushi faintly smiled, and no longer paying attention to Zhu Kei, she turned around and looked at Qing Long. Immediately prepare the medicines I've asked for. Chapter 150. Dried up spiritual plants. Qing Long looked hesitant, before he frowned and said, Princess, there is something this subordinate forgot to tell you, but about preparing those herbs, there may be some difficulties. Hushi raised her eyebrows, revealing her surprise. Those medicines were just common spiritual plants, only the congeal grass is a 4th-grade herb. Although it's considered precious, based on the Hell King Manor's wealth and influence, How could they not get it? Qinglong glanced at her with a complex expression in his eyes. Yesterday and last night, it appears that all the spiritual plants in the city were sucked dry, causing them to wither and die. Even the spiritual plants stored in jade boxes were not spared, especially all those stalks of incongeal grass. Although it's only a 4th-grade spiritual plant, it belonged to a rare species, so we really don't know where to find it. Hushi startled, suddenly recalling that along the way when she came here, all the places she passed were indeed without any green. So actually, all the spiritual plants are dead. Seeing Hushi frown, Zhu Ke at once laughed loudly. So as it turns out, you knew that all the spiritual plants had withered, and were only trying play me with this bet. You knew your method was unachievable, so you deliberately made a show of being earnest, as if you were actually taking things seriously. Slut, can you not be so shameless? Don't think that just because all the spiritual plants have withered that you don't have to fulfill our bet. I will still destroy your face. Qinglong and the others frowned as they listened, feeling that Zhu Ke has already gone insane. In order to settle her grudge with Hushi, she was even ignoring Master's safety. Bai Hu suddenly spoke. Zhu Ke, doesn't your teacher have a portable medicine garden? That's a heaven and earth treasure, so the herbs inside were surely spared of having their spiritual energy sucked away. You should quickly ask her for several kinds of herbs. Perhaps it's not too late. For what reason? Zhu Ke screamed, and then continued hysterically. Why should I help this slut? If we want to cure Master, we only need to invite my teacher to come. Even if I'm dead, I will still refuse to help this slut. After hearing Zhu Ke's rant, Qinglong Wu Xian and the others glared at her with barely contained fury. Regardless of the bet's result between her and Nailan Hushi, this type of Zhu Ke absolutely mustn't stay in Hell King Manor. Once Master awakens, we'll see how he punishes her. Hushi, however, looked calmly at Qinglong, saying, Take me to see the manor's medicine garden. Qinglong startled, astonishment on his face. Princess, the spiritual plants in the medicine garden have all died. Not even a single stalk remains. Hushi shallowly laughed, then slowly said, What I want to see are the dead spiritual plants. In this world, dead spiritual plants didn't have any value. This is why they used jade boxes to pack spiritual plants for business transactions, because once a spiritual plant withers, its spiritual energy disappears. If you tried to refine pills with them, they wouldn't be able to mix with the other ingredients or withstand the heat needed to temper the pills, so they naturally didn't have any effect. But Hushi is different. She wanted those spiritual plants to use like traditional Chinese medicines. For the so-called traditional Chinese medicine, in order for long-term preservation, it can be preserved through the processing of drying. If it's withered, it doesn't affect the effectiveness of the medicines at all. Zhu Ke eagerly wished to see Hushi's humiliation once she failed. She had better be aware. The medicine garden in Hell King Manor is very large. Moreover, because there was a spiritual formation placed around it, the spiritual energy had been extremely rich. But at this moment, the field is barren. All the plants had withered and become ashes. The crystal stones strategically placed for the spiritual formation had also lost their spiritual energy, turning into dust. Hushi sighed. How could this be? As she met Qinglong's conflicted gaze, he said, Princess, do you really not remember what happened last night? Chapter 151. I will not be refining. Hushi stared blankly, unresponsive to Qinglong's words, but still heard him when he spoke once more. Last night after Master helped heal Princess body abruptly formed a huge vortex. It practically absorbed all the spiritual energy in Yanjing City. These spiritual plants died last night because of the vortex. Hushi opened her eyes wide and examined the field of dead spiritual plants. Looking back at Qinglong again, her heart was at first astonished, but then she suddenly understood. Dandan, that's right. All of this must have been done by Dandan. That big food eater must have absorbed all of the plant's spiritual energy. Old man Shumi had previously said that for Dandan to be able to hatch, it needed an extremely large amount of spiritual energy. At the time, she had worried about how to feed this spoiled spirit pet till it was satisfied, and was concerned that it wouldn't be full until she was poor. She had guessed that Dandan would need a lot of spiritual energy to hatch, but she never would have expected that it would need this much spiritual energy. However, this is a city full of spiritual energy, and this slow egg absorbed it all yet still dared to say it's hungry to her. It was simply trying to defraud its mother. Hushi ruminated for a while, then decided to no longer care about this problem. After all the spiritual energy throughout the city had already been absorbed. It wasn't as if that little guy would still able to squeeze back into the egg, or spit out the spiritual energy anyway. Moreover, Dandan is her spirit pet. For it to be able to hatch, she is already very happy. As for the rest, who cares? Hushi squatted down, and plucking a spiritual herb's withered stalk, she brought it to the tip of her nose and sniffed it. After tearing off a little of it, she placed it into her mouth to chew and taste it. Not bad. Although there is completely no spiritual energy, the herb had only lost half of its medicinal effect. Compared to using it for special techniques, using it to concoct traditional Chinese medicines would be perfect. Hushi stood up and pointed at the withered spiritual plants while speaking. Collect the several spiritual plants that I listed before. Qinglong became puzzled. Princess, do you intend to use these for refining? Once these common herbs without spiritual energy touch a fire used for refining, they will disintegrate into ashes, then disperse in a puff of smoke. Hushi spread out her hands. As I said, I'm not an ordinary doctor, so I will not be using them for refining. Not using them for refining? So how is she going to treat Master's illness? At this moment, Qinglong couldn't help but look at her with suspicion. This Miss Naylan wouldn't really act like Zhu Ke had said, right? Just coming by to show off and swindle them. But recalling the miracles performed on Ouyang Haoshuan's body, he pushed down the doubt in his heart, and began collecting the dead spiritual plants one by one. After returning to the bedroom where Nangongyu was residing, Hushi once again passed down a series of instructions. She wanted them to prepare a pot, stove and fire, and even told Qinglong to find a huge wooden tub. As Zhu Ke watched from the side, a sneer was plastered across her face as she laughed loudly. I've studied medicine for over 10 years and have followed my teacher to see countless patients, but I've never seen a medical treatment such as this. Naylan Hushi, you are clearly trying to exhaust your limited abilities since you know you will lose, right? Hushi was doing her job, focusing on crushing the medicine ingredients in accordance with strict measurements. When she heard what was said, she raised her head to glance at Zhu Ke, disdainfully laughing. No culture is terrible. Instead, the most terrible thing is when someone has no culture, yet still insists on running around, making an exhibition of themselves. At the time your father and mother gave birth to you, did they not tell you that your eyes grow on the top of your head, since you're a toad? PFFTT. Bai Hu, who was standing nearby, overhead and couldn't bear it anymore, laughing loudly. As he looked at Zhu Ke's twisted and insane appearance, he actually felt like gloating. He had absolutely no sympathy for her. Zhu Ke screamed, wanting to rush forwards and destroy Hushi's face. That woman dared to say that she, Zhu Ke, is a toad who wants to eat swan flesh. How dare that slut mock her? However, she had barely reached Hushi when she suddenly sensed a huge wave of spiritual power head towards her. She felt a sharp burst of pain in her abdomen, and then her body abruptly resembled a kite with its string snapped as it flew away, before she then landed severely on the ground. Chapter 152. Remove Nangongyu's clothes. The one who attacked her is the silent and stone-faced Wu Xian, who had quietly been standing to the side. The room's door closed in front of her with a bang. No matter how much she pounded on the door to be let back into the room, no one opened the door for her. Hushi had readied all the herbs, and began to use the pot to boil them like traditional Chinese medicine. For a while she hesitated, then secretly added spiritual spring water from the 9th secluded spirit spring into the pot. She even placed the silver needles she used for medical purposes into the pot with the medicine, then left it all to boil together. After an hour, the traditional Chinese medicine had successfully boiled, and the entire room was filled with the strong smell of medicine. The smell of this medicine is different from the smell of medicines normally used in Miluo continent. There is no sense of spiritual power, nor an atmosphere of vegetation. On the contrary, It only carried a strong bitter smell. Looking at the big pot of dense, dark soup, Qinglong's and the others' expressions turned somewhat fearful. Bai Hu couldn't help but murmur, "Princess, the thing in this pot, you won't give it to Master to drink, right? If Master drank the thing in this pot, will he really be able to survive?" Hushi ignored him and poured the boiled decoction of medicine into the tub. The tub had been filled with hot water, and after more thought, Hushi secretly added more spiritual spring water before giving a command. "Remove Nangongyu's clothes and place him in the tub." Qinglong and others looked at each other in dismay. Ambiguous expressions on all of their faces. From the beginning, Miss Nayland hadn't admitted that she is a princess, continually denying an intimate relationship between herself and Master. How is it proper for an unmarried girl to see Master without any clothes? What they didn't know, though, was that once Hushi entered the role of medical practitioner, she will completely forget her identity and gender. Whether is it a man or woman, wearing clothes or naked, in her eyes they are all the same. Qinglong quickly put Nangongyu into the tub, the black liquid rising up to cover Nangongyu's chest. The moment the medicine touched Nangongyu's body, it started to slightly boil. It was at this moment that Hushi's expression became serious. In fact, she knew that it was a risk to use congeal grass, as it is an extremely cold plant. But the cold energy in Nangongyu's body is too strong, so if she were to purposely use all the herbs with a yang property, switching his temperature from extreme cold to extreme heat, it would seriously damage his body. It would be like the injuries he gets from the flame cave. So although his cold poison would be temporarily cured, in the long run it'll be even more damaging to his meridians. Therefore, Hushi had come up with the idea of using congeal grass as a guide, matching it with the other herbs to temporarily ease his illness. But congeal grass is still an extremely cold plant after all. So once it entered Nangongyu's body, mixing with his cold poison, it will immediately make Nangongyu's illness worse, even life-threatening. The only way to help prevent this is if she uses her silver needles. Before the congeal grass's cold essence can enter his arteries, traveling to his heart, she would unblock every one of his major acupuncture points, giving the other ingredients in the medicine a chance to advance. With this, they would be able to have an effect neutralizing the congeal grass. And so during this process no one was allowed to disturb her. Qinglong and the others quietly left, guarding the room from outside. Yet the always silent Wuxia couldn't help but frown. This Miss Nayland, if I remember correctly, she is a concubine's daughter, and was abandoned by the Nayland family. With a cowardly disposition, she wouldn't complain even though she was forced to suffer bullying and humiliation. On top of that, she didn't even have a cultivation base. How can her true appearance and the rumors about her be so different? Before Qinglong could reply, Wu clicked his tongue twice and laughed. If this little girl is considered cowardly, then there are no brave women in this world. Someone sold her to Gluttonous House to be an auction product, but when she opened her eyes, she cleanly killed all the guests in the room. Master and I personally witnessed it with our own eyes. Chapter 153. Would you like to touch something else? Wuxia raised his brows, doubt written on his face. So are you saying that the rumors can't be trusted? Qinglong promptly responded. I personally witnessed her treatment of Ouyang Haoshuan. Her method was quite strange. You know that Ouyang Haoshuan had been crippled for more than a year with his meridians fractured, and seeing him in person, it was just like he was a person preparing to enter the gates of hell. Yet unexpectedly, because of her strange method, she was able to save him. Let alone walking like normal. Even his cultivation base has been restored to normal. This matter has created a stir throughout Yanjing City, and up until now, there are still many groups of people searching for her. If Master hadn't helped to obstruct them, perhaps the genius Dr. Shi would have been fought over by all the powerful parties long ago. Several people heard what Qinglong said, their faces showing hope and admiration. Such an amazing woman. Maybe she really can cure Master's illness? And so Hushi, the one that they were talking about, was currently in the room, her treatment reaching a critical moment. The speed of her hands was very fast. With only a vague shadow visible, the The silver needles in her fingertips flickered as she concentrated on continuously roaming Nangongyu's body, in order to have precise control over the effect of each acupuncture point. Every needle that was inserted and removed used her spiritual power. As she carefully placed the set of needles in his body, Hushi's own body was already drenched in sweat, a faint pink flush appearing on her face. She sighed and wiped the sweat on her forehead, moving to sit down by the bedside. At this time the medicinal water in the tub had stopped boiling. It was now calmly rippling around Nangongyu's body, and his body that was originally freezing, similar to an ice cube, had now gradually risen in temperature. As Hushi's gaze slowly traveled down from Nangongyu's slightly flushed face, stopping on his chest, her face suddenly reddened. It was until this moment that she finally realized she had been examining Nangongyu's naked body for a while now. Not only that, she had also practically touched every inch of skin on his upper body. Nangongyu was currently unconscious. He simply sat leaning against the edge of the tub quietly. Seeing Nangongyu like this, she slowly began to be lost in thought. Indeed, he really is an evildoer that could make a person's heart pound. His long hair was draped like a waterfall over his shoulders, like smooth black silk, while his pale skin was becoming a faint honey color due to the warmth. When he was wearing clothes, he seemed to have a slender figure. Yet now that he was naked, she could see that he is covered with delicately defined muscles, especially that six-pack. If they were in the time of her past life, without a doubt he could make all the women salivate. Of course, Nangongyu's most outstanding attribute is his face. His facial features were as exquisite as a god's. With an undoubtedly elegant appearance, he gave people the impression of a ruler overlooking his lands under heaven. Such a powerful and majestic presence easily made a person become subconsciously intoxicated and subdued. With his outstanding appearance, if she was in her past life, she can't say for sure whether she would be able to pay enough to provide for him. Well, although she hadn't had any lovers in her previous life, if she had encountered such an extraordinary man, she certainly wouldn't have let him off. With the power and financial resources available to her in her past life, it wouldn't have been a problem for her to provide for 8 to 10 men. As she looked at those honey-colored arms, his muscles tight with tension, Hushi couldn't help but stretch out her hand and gently caress them. TSK, the feeling is pretty good, hard and yet smooth. She slowly became preoccupied with wondering about how it would feel to touch his six-pack, as when she was treating him she had solely focused on treatment. And now she realized she had forgotten to feel them. All of a sudden, a low and husky voice reached her ears, definitely satisfied. Hushi, without thinking about it, blurted out, "Indeed, really good." Low hypnotic laughter echoed in ears, like a feather teasing her heart. It's good if you like them. Do you want to try touching something else? What? Chapter 154. Attempt for success. Hushi suddenly jolted awake from her thoughts, and raising her head, she came into contact with a pair of fathomless eyes. A corner of Nangongyu's mouth held a loving smile, while his gaze was gentle and soft as he looked at her. His bright eyes contained waves that promised to drown her. Hushi felt like something was burning her, so she abruptly withdrew her hand. But because she used too much force, she almost stumbled to the ground. Alas, his charm is so potent that it was distracting her. Where did her alertness as an assassin go? She completely hadn't realized that this guy had already awoken. Hushi gave a low cough, and pushing down her embarrassment, she asked, "When did you wake up?" A secret smile shone in Nangongyu's eyes. "When you were mumbling to yourself about how you would provide for me." Cough, cough, cough. Hushi choked on her saliva. Hushi coughed several times, before she then raised her voice in embarrassment. "You heard it wrongly. What provide for him?" She wouldn't admit it. She absolutely wouldn't admit it. A patronizing expression appeared across Nangongyu's face, and reaching out a hand, he helped to gently pat her back while lovingly saying, I must have heard it wrongly." Hushi heaved a sigh of relief. At first she had thought that this guy was pretty good. She never would have imagined that he is actually black-bellied one. But she soon heard Nangongyu continue. "Compared to you providing for me, it's more likely that I'll provide for you instead." Hushi just blankly stared at him. She wanted to take back her previous thoughts. This guy, through and through, is a black sesame seed to the end. Nan Gongyu was amused by her rarely seen embarrassed and cute expression. His hand that had been patting her back slowly changed into a gentle stroking motion. Soon, the temperature between the two of them gradually started rising. Unconsciously, Nan Gongyu had already risen, unhurriedly approaching Hashi. His hot breath fanned across her face, causing the heat hanging in the air to become almost stifling. As the two became closer and closer, their lips nearly touching, Hashi suddenly tilted her head, causing Nan Gongyu's lips to land on her soft cheek. Panic appeared in Hashi's eyes as she hurriedly stood up. Silver needles still remain in your body. It'll be some time before they can be removed. You shouldn't move about and randomly tamper with them. Be careful or else you will suffer. In actuality, there were only 6 silver needles that remained in Nan Gongyu's body. These needles were only there for slight adjustments. They didn't have any special effects. Yet Hashi herself was unsure of why she chose this moment to suddenly lie. Seeing that she wanted to struggle free of his grasp, sharpness flashed in Nan Gongyu's eyes as the silver needles in his body abruptly flew out. His hands holding Hashi tightened, dragging her back into his embrace. The two of them were still separated by the tub, yet their upper bodies were tightly entwined, causing the still wet Nan Gongyu to dampen Hashi's clothes, further reducing their distance. Nan Gongyu bowed his head, watching the girl in his embrace somewhat panic with a helpless expression. The emotion in his eyes flowed like hot spring water, soft and warm, and from his mouth he softly murmured, "You know that I want to kiss you so." As his voice fell, he bent his head and kissed her deeply. Hashi felt like her whole body was wrapped in a mass of fire. Her lips, her breath, her blood, all were being invaded by an unfamiliar taste. The taste of this man was strong and overbearing, yet still filled with adoration. Her mind became fuzzy, and she felt that she would become addicted to this feeling, unable to extricate herself, unable to escape. However, an image abruptly appeared in her mind, one of Lungye glaring down at her. She heard that man say, "Since I can't have you, then it would be better to destroy you." That man had been her life and death partner, the only friend and close relative she had acknowledged. Yet ultimately he had stabbed her in the heart with a dagger, laughing like a crazy man. "If you can't be mine, then I will never allow anyone else to have you." One black-bellied equals two-faced. Chapter 155. Unrelated. It was like cold water suddenly doused the passion in her heart. In an instant it erased all feelings of addiction that had just started to sprout. Hashi abruptly opened her eyes, vigorously pushing Nan Gongyu away from her. A loud bam sounded as Nan Gongyu was knocked against the edge of tub by her firm push, and he let out a pained groan. His complexion that had just started to regain a little color, once again became deathly pale. Even his skin had once more become icy cold and transparent. The room's door was pushed open and Qinglong rushed in. Noticing that Nan Gongyu was awake and standing, he couldn't help but exclaim, "Master, you're awake." Nan Gongyu's face was ashen, and without taking his gaze off Hashi, he coldly said 2 words, "Get out." Qinglong trembled under Nan Gongyu's snarl, and seeing that Hashi's clothes were damp, his face blushed and he immediately rushed out. Once again, Hashi and Nan Gongyu were the only 2 people in the room. Yet this time, the atmosphere between them is no longer one of passion. Instead, it was quite frosty. Hashi felt a twinge of guilt as she looked at Nan Gongyu's pale complexion, and hastily stepping forward, she grabbed his hand and took his pulse. Her worry obvious as she asked, "How do you feel now?" Nan Gongyu, however, flipped his hand and grabbed Hashi's small hand, tugging her in front of his body. His sharp eyes gazed at her firmly, as if he wanted to see through her, inside and out. Hashi shuddered when she felt his cold palm, making her worriedly ask, "Can you let go of my hand? Let me help examine you." Who knew that Nan Gongyu wouldn't only not release her hand, instead, his grip on her tightened. His voice gloomy with suppressed anger as he said, "She ere a moment ago, you were enjoying my embrace, so why did you suddenly push me away? Who did you think of when I was holding you?" Because he cared about her, he was therefore sensitive to the changes in her emotions. He had placed her in his heart and couldn't stand for her to be possessed by anyone else. In that split second before Hushi had shoved Nangongyu away, he had been able to sense her sorrow, resentment, and rejection. What kind of experiences had she gone through for her mood to change so abruptly? For whom was she sad? For whom did she grieve? When he thought that there might be another person in his she-heir's heart, Nangongyu struggled to suppress the bloodthirsty killing intent in his heart. If that person was in front of him now, without the slight hesitation, he would brutally dismember them. Hushi startled, immediately shaking off his hand and snapping, "I don't know what you're talking about. You should quickly sit down and let me examine your condition. The medicine hasn't entered your body completely yet, and if the cold now devours the heat, your condition will be worse than it was before. Do you wish to die?" Nangongyu remained unmoved. His eyes stared at her with a fixed gaze, as if he could see deep down into her heart. Hushi became uncomfortable under that overbearing and stubborn gaze, but at the same time, she could see Nangongyu's complexion becoming paler. In her heart she hated his overbearing attitude, as much as she hated herself for worrying so much about him. Thus, she angrily flew into a rage and said, "We're completely unrelated to each other, neither friends or family. At most we can be considered strangers. How is it strange that I pushed you away? I don't like acting disrespectful towards strangers, but it's only right that I resist. Or do you think I should welcome any man who I've only known for little more than a month?" Nangongyu's face darkened, his beautiful eyes looking like they were about to ignite into flames. With a lightning-fast movement, he extended a nimble hand and firmly seized Hushi's waist, pulling her into his embrace. Grimly laughing, he said, "Haha, completely unrelated to each other, neither friends or family. So in she-heir's eyes, I am completely unrelated and only a stranger?" Chapter 156. Not going to bother. When Hushi recalled all the things he had done for her, like repeatedly saving her from traps, she couldn't help but feel guilty, her cheeks reddening. Her urge to push him away faltered and her small hands stayed on his bare chest, not allowing him to come closer, but stopping him from approaching. Nangongyu was pleased when he noticed her blushing cheeks, and lowering his head, he used a low, gentle voice to whisper in her ear, "She-heir, you had best admit it. From now on, you are one of my people, the princess of Hell King Manor, I Nangongyu's wife. Besides me, you aren't allowed to think of other men. Furthermore, you aren't allowed to leave me." "You're crazy," Hushi replied, retreating back a step in a fluster. Recalling that the people in this manor had been calling her princess, her face once again reddened, but this time with annoyance. "Because you said I'm your princess. I'm your princess? When did I agree to that? When you proposed marriage in the modern era, you must kneel to present the ring." Yet unexpectedly this guy had acted on his own initiative, saying that she is his wife. For what reason? When had she promised to marry him? But in the end, she was still worried about his condition, secretly mumbling a few words to herself. "I'm not going to bother with this crazy man." Then, stepping forward, she grabbed Nangongyu's hand and began to take his pulse. This time Nangongyu didn't struggle and refuse her, his gaze on Hushi gentle and tender, able to make one's blood run cold. Hushi removed her hand, unhappily staring back at him. A smile flashed in Nangongyu's eyes, and raising an eyebrow he said, "Doesn't she-heir remember that you still owe this king a large favor? People say that to repay the kindness of saving someone's life, you should return it by devoting your life to them. She-heir, guess how many times you owe this king your life's devotion." The expression on Hushi's face slowly changed, and following that, she coldly snorted. Removing a bottle of spirit spring water from her space, she passed it to Nangongyu, sneering, "It's still unknown who promised who. However, now I'm the one saving your life." A corner of Nangongyu's mouth pursed with a slight curve, and he softly said, "How about as long as she-heir is happy, this king promises to give in to you?" Hushi stared at him in shock, thinking, "As your highness Hell King, the Azura of legends, you're supposed to be grand. Yet why do you have no sense of shame?" Nangongyu was all smiles as he took the spirit spring water, then drained the bottle in one gulp. Once the bottle was empty, astonishment appeared on his face. "This is ninth secluded spirit spring water?" The look on Hushy's face changed, and caution emerged in her eyes as she asked in a low voice, "How do you know?" She had withdrawn this spirit spring water from her space, and she hadn't seen anything about it in any of the ancient books in this world, so how did Nangongyu know? Then what about her Shumi space and Dandan's existence? Will they be exposed? Nangongyu's eyes were full of shock as he gazed towards Hushy. This is indeed spirit spring water from the 9th secluded spirit spring. This kind of spirit spring water is rare in Miluo continent. In legends, apart from being capable of helping to develop muscles, it's able to aid in the refining of pills and help craft outstanding weapons. It's a treasure that all high-ranking doctors yearn to possess. Hushy frowned as she pondered. Since there is no 9th secluded spirit spring in Miluo continent, how are you so sure? Nangongyu laughed, and without answering her, he instead continued with, in legends, it is said that there is a total of 9 types of spiritual springs left in this world since the wars in ancient times. Named according to their level, the 9th secluded spirit spring is the highest. Even the grand clans of the upper realm are only able to take the smallest amounts. And yet you gave it to me to drink like it was just ordinary spring water. If other people were to know about it, do you know what that would mean? At this moment, Hushy had already calmed down, and hearing what was said, she slightly sneered. But instead of responding to him, she grabbed a handful of silver needles, beginning to rapidly insert the needles into his acupuncture points. Chapter 157. No one is as powerful as your man naturally. Hushy knew that it was never a good idea to inadvertently reveal one's wealth. Therefore, even though Xiao Li and the others were aware that the food she could make was delicious, rich in spiritual energy, and very effective, they were unaware that she used spirit spring water when cooking. However, that was definitely a big secret. So how could she, just because of anxiousness, freely reveal it in front of Nangongyu? Could it be that in her heart she already considered Nangongyu trustworthy? Hushy's heart trembled, and the silver needles in her hands suddenly deviated from their desired position. Nangongyu let out a low groan, that husky, yet rich and magnetic voice like a cat's claws scratching at her heart. Hushy quickly withdrew her hand, and with a somewhat guilty conscience asked, Are you okay? Nangongyu frowned as he replied, It hurts. Her heart wildly jumped about in her chest when she heard his answer. Hushy clearly knew that Nangongyu was deliberately acting weak, but he was far too sexy, with such an evildoer appearance. Hushy's face reddened as she removed the silver needles in his body, quietly asking, Now you know pain? Before, when you lost your mind trying to kiss me, how could you not know pain? Serves you right. Nangongyu's life is considered to be saved, and after going through several days of treatment, his body might possibly be able to recover to its previous state. But as mentioned earlier, regardless of whether it was the flame cave or Hushy's current prescription, both were only temporarily solutions. Next year, on the 7th day of the 7th month, the cold poison in Nangongyu's body will once again flare up as before. In that case, she must think of a way to completely eradicate the cold poison in Nangongyu's body. Hushy's mind began to quickly search through every kind of medication and illustration in the All Living Things record. She compared each of them, one by one, hoping to find something with similar symptoms to Nangongyu's. While this was happening, Nangongyu summoned Qinglong to enter the room to wash him. Once he was dressed in clean clothes, Nangongyu returned to the bed to lay down. After he had finished helping, Qinglong quietly exited the room, once again leaving Nangongyu and Hushy alone. But Hushy was unaware of it all, as she was still immersed in her thoughts. Affection and tenderness overflowed in Nangongyu's eyes as he smiled, and extending his hand he gently gripped Hushy's small, soft hand. Is she worried about my illness? Hushy suddenly returned to her senses, struggling to break free of his grasp, yet found herself unable to. She couldn't help but look displeased. So what about it? I am a doctor and I'm interested in incurable illnesses, and anyway, it's something strange. Nangongyu decided not to expose her reluctance to admit the truth. Instead, he merely controlled his expression as he said, Do you have an impression of what happened to you when you advanced cultivation bases? Hushi shook her head. She only knew about what had happened from what Qinglong had said. Nangongyu's expression became solemn, and in a deep voice he said, I've already warned the people in Hell King Manor, and no one has the courage to speak out about what happened last night. Xier, you must also remember that last night's unusual phenomenon has nothing to do with you. You only suffered injuries and was saved by me, who then brought you here and treated your injuries in one night. As for the rest, I will handle it. You just need to trust me, do you understand? Hushi's heart shivered as she nodded and wondered what he would do, especially since it was an event crying out for a supernatural explanation. When she recalled last night, when she was in a fight over her life and death, she couldn't help but to have lingering fears. You know who was it that wanted to kill me last night? She had heard that group of assassins was from the Drought Demon Organization. However, she didn't know what kind of power the Drought Demon Organization held. Nangongyu indifferently replied, The Drought Demon Organization is an underground trading market. They're listed as an assassin organization in Miluo continent. They have been ranked as one of top 3 killers, never slipping from their position. The top 3? Are they very powerful? Asked Hushi with a pondering expression. Nangongyu faintly smiled, and all of a sudden he leaned closer to her ear, saying in low voice, No one is as powerful as your man. Rouge. Hushi pushed him away, her face turning red as she said, I will deal with my enemies on my own. I can handle it by myself, I don't need your help. Ha! The Drought Demon Organization and whoever wanted to assassinate me. I will let them regret coming to this world. Chapter 158. Glad you trust me so much. Nangongyu laughed in a low voice, lovingly caressing her small cheek. Indeed domineering, definitely a fancy woman worthy of me. Nangongyu. Whatever Xier wants to do, know that as your husband, I will support you. What husband? Who wants you as a husband? Hushi glanced blankly at him, causing Nangongyu to laugh before asking her, Xier, what rank is your cultivation base at now? Even though he had seen Hushi's cultivation base rapidly increase yesterday, after that strange phenomenon ended, the spiritual energy in Hushi's body had disappeared without a trace. Normally, you can tell what rank a martial artist on the Miluo continent is by the amount of spiritual power that they leak. It was only when they used a special method to conceal it that it was impossible to tell. Otherwise, a high-level martial artist would be able to easily see through to a low-level martial artist's cultivation base. But even with his current cultivation base, Nangongyu was completely unable to see Hushi's rank. Hearing what he asked startled Hushi, and following Nangongyu's directions, she focused her spiritual power before her eyes, looking towards Nangongyu. Suddenly, a clear thought flashed through her mind. Middle stage of the nascent soul stage. She suddenly remembered that when she had seen Zhu Ke, Bai Hu, and the others, although she hadn't focused her spiritual power before eyes, she had still received a vague impression that informed her the rank of these people's cultivation bases. How could that be? Even with a spiritual item, isn't it still impossible for a low-level martial artist to see the rank of a high-level martial artist? Hushi's heart was puzzled, when suddenly, Dandan's childlike and lively voice sounded in her ears. Hee hee, this is all due to Dandan's contribution. How is it, mother? I'm awesome, right? Hushi was shocked for a moment before she responded. Dandan, you're not allowed to read my thoughts as you please. You're invading my privacy. Dandan only laughed mischievously, and with its childlike voice it explained, Mother, you can rest assured. I know that it would be rude to be doing something indecent like listening when Mother and that big brother were playing kissing. Don't worry, Dandan did not see anything. Dandan, you're too much. And why he is big brother, while I am mother? Do I look that old? In her mind, she felt like she had just been run over by countless horses. She realized that she needed to find the time to have a proper talk with Dandan. Since it was a baby, this child's education is a must. Nangongyu was still waiting for her response, and seeing her expression constantly changing, he couldn't help but ask her, What's wrong? Is there a problem with your body? No, Hushi shook her head, then hesitated as she said, If I'm feeling it right, I should be on the 8th rank of the foundation establishment stage. Nangongyu's eyebrows raised slightly. Although he had expected it, when he heard this result, he still felt surprised. Hushi pursed her lips, and after once again hesitating for a moment, she said, "Also, I seem to be able to clearly see your rank, middle stage of the nascent soul stage." Hearing this first startled Nangongyu, before his eyes then immediately filled with joy. Reaching out his hand, he gently tugged Hushi into his embrace, softly laughing as he said, "Shi-er, I'm so happy. I'm extremely happy that you trust me so much." Hushi saw Nangongyu's brilliant flower-like smile, and felt that it made his handsome face become more dazzling and stunning. She couldn't help but secretly scold, evildoer in her heart, while saying mockingly, "What are you getting all crazy about?" Nangongyu loosened his arms, sternly saying, "Shi-er, I'm very happy that you told me, but it should only be limited to me, do you understand? I don't know why you have this ability, but it's very likely that this ability of yours will attract the attention of other martial artists." Hushi scoffed, as she thought it was only to be expected as it was common sense, and said, "Of course I'm aware of this point. Who wouldn't understand that it would be easy for an ordinary and innocent person to get into trouble on account of greed? Do you take me for an idiot?" Chapter 159. Complete recovery in 3 days. Nangongyu's eyes gleamed with a gentle happiness. She clearly knew that she couldn't tell people her secret, yet she easily told him. Hypocritical little girl, still daring to say that she doesn't like him. Hushi examined Nangongyu's body once again, to ensure that there were no remaining problems, and gave him a few bottles of spirit spring water for later. She then called Qinglong to enter. After Hushi explained that there were some matters that needed her attention to Nangongyu, she prepared to leave. No one could have guessed that Nangongyu would suddenly grab her hand though, revealing a grief-filled expression of abandonment towards her. Black lines appeared on Hushi's forehead. It was only after she had repeatedly said that she would come again tomorrow that Nangongyu reluctantly released her. Qinglong followed behind Hushi to send her off, while secretly observing his master's calm and serene face. Comparing it to his pleading look a moment ago, he couldn't help but shudder. Hushi and Qinglong had barely left Nangongyu's quarters when she noticed Bai Hu Wuxian, Zhu Ke, and the others, anxiously waiting outside the door. Because Nangongyu's treatment had drained too much of her spiritual power, added with the temperature change of going from a blisteringly hot area to a then cool and refreshing area, Hushi's face soon became colorless and somewhat pale, her exhaustion evident on her face. Noticing her haggard appearance, Zhu Ke was overjoyed, thinking that she had won the bet. With her brows furrowed and fierce eyes, she darted looks of hate towards Hushi while facing Qinglong, and in a loud voice said, "Qinglong, this woman is simply unable to cure Master, right? Now that Master's treatment has been delayed, his body would have suffered more harm, so how will you bear the consequences?" Qinglong slightly narrowed his eyes. He looked at Zhu Ke with disgust. However, he has always lacked much expression, so it was impossible for people to tell what he was feeling as he said, "Zhu Ke, you're so hopeful for Princess to be unable to cure Master. In your eyes, is Master's safety incomparable to your despicable mind? Stop with your venomous slander." Zhu Ke screamed, then shouted hoarsely, "Obviously you easily believe that slut, placing Master in danger. You even still call that slut Princess. You must have fallen for her beauty and were seduced by her, right?" A cold burst of spiritual power abruptly flashed in Qinglong's eyes, and with his long sword suddenly unsheathed and in his hand, he ruthlessly struck towards Zhu Quebec. Zhu Ke only had time to feel immense spiritual power hurtling towards her, like a mountain of pressure on her body. This caused her fall to her knees as she vomited blood, her complexion becoming pale. You, Zhu Ke's voice trembled, and she vomited another mouthful blood that foamed, completely unable to say a word. Wuxian stepped forward as he anxiously asked, "How is Master's condition now?" Qinglong glanced at Hushi's smirk, before faintly replying, "Master is already awake. In 3 days he'll be completely recovered. I personally confirmed this when I saw Master." When Wuxian and the others heard this, their expressions showed their relief. And with this burden lifted from their shoulders, the tenseness in their bodies instantly relaxed. Despite Master being just a young man of 20 years old, compared to those of them who had lived for many years, it can be said that they considered him as a nephew. However, for the last few years, Master had used his unparalleled strength and intelligence to become the pillar of Hell King Manor and the Metal Chelan army. Without Master, it was likely that these people would be like headless flies without direction, incapable of knowing what's proper. Chapter 160. New appearance. Once UK heard this, her face blanked, and she looked at Hushi as she screamed, "Impossible! How could she be able to cure Master? Qinglong, you must have teamed up with that slut to deceive us." Qinglong frowned, yet before he was able to speak, Hushi had already taken a step forward as she faintly laughed. "Zhu Ke, since I already have the results of Nangong Yu's treatment, isn't it about time that you fulfill your side of the bet? If you're truly able to cure Master, I will discard my cultivation base and henceforth no longer be a doctor." Zhu Ke's eyes revealed her panic, and suddenly standing up, she quickly took out a light greenish flying sword. Glaring at Hushi with bloodshot eyes, she screamed, "Slut, you've obviously paired up with Qinglong to deceive me, and now you want me to fulfill the bet? Dream on. Today I shall cut you to pieces. Let's see how you will use your fox charm face to seduce Master then." After saying this, her hand gripped the flying sword tighter as she leapt towards Hushi. Qinglong and the others became anxious once they saw this. Yet just as they were about to help, after all, Master's safety is now dependent on Miss Nalan's hands, they were stopped by Bai Hu, his eyes hinting at them to watch the play about to unfold. Seeing Zhu Ke's sword thrusting towards her, a golden light suddenly burst from Hushi's body. The golden light contained thunder and lightning, and as it let out a crackle and a rattle, the tip of Zhu Ke's sword reached Hushi's body. Zhu Ke shook all over. Her whole body spasmed as if it had been shocked by electricity, and her hands and feet twitched for a moment, shaking like she was having an epileptic fit. With just a few seconds' pause, Hushi took out her bone whip, lightly and skillfully sweeping it over the top of Zhu Ke's head. "Ah!" Zhu Ke screamed, and as her body retreated backwards, her hands quickly reached up to touch her head. However, she didn't feel the soft fine black hair that normally graced the top of her head as she expected. Instead, she only felt the slippery feeling of blood oozing from her scalp. Zhu Ke became frightened, and lifting her head, she noticed that Bai Hu and the others were trying their best to restrain their laughter, while Nalan Hushi had a sneer upon her face. Soon after, Hushi seemed to think of something, and returning the whip, she next took out a mirror. Facing towards Zhu Ke, she unhurriedly said, "You must be curious about your appearance now, right? Here, take a look at your new appearance that I styled just for you. Are you satisfied?" Zhu Ke trembled all over. The mirror reflected a somewhat aged appearance, while on the face there was a sinister, centipede-like scar. Above that face there was now no longer any neatly groomed fine black hair, rather, there was only a smooth baldness. "Ah!" Zhu Ke let out a miserable scream. "This is not me. This is not me. Slut, you slut, how dare you change my appearance to this? I want you to die with me. I want you to die without a burial." Zhu Ke's eyes became blood red, her face exposing her insanity. All of a sudden, she took out a simple and unadorned lamp from her bosom. The moment they saw that lamp, the expression on Qinglong and the others' faces changed. This seemingly unremarkable lamp was called a dream travel lamp, a high-level magical item given to her by her teacher. This dream travel lamp could only be used by gold core stage and above martial artists. Just one hit could completely deplete the spiritual power within a martial artist's body. In case the spiritual power of the user was insufficient, blood essence could be used instead. But once used, it instantly made the opponent's consciousness fuzzy, causing them to lose all ability to resist. With such a dangerous magical item, Hushi wasn't the only one with an insufficient rank. Even Qinglong and the others were afraid that if Zhu Ke used it, then it wouldn't just be Hushi meeting her end. Chapter 161. Discarded cultivation base. Everyone watching expressed anxiousness on their faces, as they wanted to save Hushi. But the speed at which Zhu Ke unleashed the dream travel lamp was too quick, and they were simply powerless to block it. As soon as it happened, the top of the lamp let out a light that headed straight towards Hushi. Yet suddenly a faint white light covered Zhu Ke, together with the dream travel lamp. The radiance surrounding the dream travel lamp was instantly extinguished, once again returning it into a simple and unadorned lamp. It and Zhu Ke then fell towards the ground, Zhu Ke landing on her butt. As she gazed at a point not far in front of her, her eyes filled with panic. Hushi turned around and saw Nan Gongyu unhurriedly walking out. With a straight posture, other than his somewhat pale complexion, he was barely showing any traces of sickness. Yet Hushi could sense the cold energy gradually increasing inside his body. She frowned and was about to speak, but Nan Gongyu spoke first. I heard that you and Shi Er made a bet, that if she was able to cure me, you would discard your cultivation base? Zhu Ke had been blankly staring at Nan Gongyu with infatuation, but when she heard that, she suddenly returned to her senses. Quickly kneeling, she began to weep. Master, this subordinate was merely about worried your safety. Every year your illness flares up, and year after year it becomes more severe. Now in order to save you when you were close to death, an unknown woman was brought in. Seeing that, this subordinate couldn't help but feel distressed and anxious. Therefore, I thought that as long as my teacher were to come, if my teacher were to come diagnose and treat you, the source of Master's illness would definitely be completely cured. After hearing her remark, he only slightly smirked. So when Zhu Ke raised her head and saw his smiling expression, she thought that Master had forgiven her, her heart becoming extremely happy. But it soon dropped as she listened to Nan Gongyu indifferently say, forget it, whether you made a bet or not doesn't matter. Since you've been disrespectful towards Shi Er, if Shi Er wants you to be punished, then you should discard your cultivation base at once. Zhu Ke all of a sudden froze and looked up at Nan Gongyu in disbelief. Without waiting for her to react, a white light shaped like a sword flickered on Nan Gongyu's hand, and he casually pointed it at Zhu Quebec. Zhu Ke felt a burst of sharp pain all over her body. Then, as if she suddenly sprung a leak, her cultivation base violently flowed out of her body like spring water. Her facial features rapidly aged, and in the blink of an eye, she looked like a 40-year-old woman. Master, I've always been faithful and true to you. In my heart I've always regarded you as the sky, so how can you do this to me? Zhu Ke's voice was hoarse, and with her eyes filled with emotions of unwillingness, despair, and resentment, she hysterically screamed. Nan Gongyu looked down at her. His expression was cold, like he was looking at a powerless and low ant. I said that Shi Er is my princess and yet you were still disrespectful towards her. It was unfaithful. Due to your selfish desires you blocked Shi Er from treating me. And that wasn't something a servant should do. Since you've proven yourself to be unfaithful, how do I know that you won't betray my subordinates at any time? If I discard you, what are you going to do about that? Zhu Ke dropped to the ground at once, tears and traces of blood across her face, while all hope was wiped clean from her features. Nan Gongyu glanced at Qing Long and the others, then indifferently said, bring her to the spirit sealing prison. Don't let her easily die. Qing Long and the others promptly complied, dragging the dazed Zhu Ke away. This time no one sympathized with Zhu Quebec. This woman's actions had already crossed all of their bottom lines, and for her own despicable heart, she had put Master's safety at risk. Her crime deserved 1,000 deaths. Hushi saw Nan Gongyu's complexion become extremely pale, and quickly walking over to him she said, you still haven't hurried back to rest? This time you dared to use spiritual power. Do you not want your life anymore? Chapter 162, Jade Fire Toad. Nan Gongyu laughed faintly, reaching out his hand in the direction of the dream travel lamp. The dream travel lamp then lightly floated up to Nan Gongyu's hand. He gave the lamp to Hushi, gently caressing her cheek as he said, Shi Er, these past few days I've been the cause of your suffering, leading you to being wronged. I didn't kill Zhu Ke not because I mean to spare her life, but because her teacher has her life lantern. If her teacher were to know that Zhu Ke had died, the Doctors Association will try to find out how, and it will cause you danger instead. Don't be angry, okay? I'm not angry. Hashi spoke without thinking the matter through, pushing him back into the room. Just a mere Zhuke, of course she wouldn't take it to heart. Not to mention, all the weapons in her possession have yet to be fortified. At the moment Zhuke might not feel anything wrong with the wound on her head, but in a few days she will be in so much pain that she will wish she could die. Hashi will naturally take revenge by herself on those she has hatred for. To use other people's hands to get revenge for her is simply not her style. After Nangongyu returned to his room to rest, Hashi sighed. Yet just as she was about to leave, she was stopped by Qinglong and the others. Princess, may I ask, do you have a way to completely cure Master's illness? Hashi stared blankly once she heard this. Then the light in her eyes slightly flashed. In regards to this problem, she had also been pondering over it, but when she was in the room before she had finally recalled something. After searching her memory, she finally found one type of poison herb that elicited similar symptoms to Nangongyu's. In the All Living Things record there is a highly graded cold poison, called Ice Star Seed. If absorbed, the Ice Star Seed would cause the yin energy in the body to reach its peak, inside and outside, freezing and stiffening the blood and inner organs. For an ordinary people to take the Ice Star Seed, if the opposite object wasn't immediately found, it would be inevitable that the first time the illness flared they would die. With these kinds of symptoms, it can be said to be a very similar situation to the cold poison in Nangongyu's body. And in the All Living Things record, it was recorded that the Ice Star Seed's nemesis is the Jade Fire Toad. The Jade Fire Toad is different to common yang objects as it is a kind of spirit pet. In itself it doesn't have a fierce yang attribute, but its nature is to absorb cold energy, dissolving the cold energy without corrosion. Therefore, in the All Living Things record, it was documented that people who suffered from the Ice Star Seed, as long as they kept a Jade Fire Toad by their side, every time the illness flared up it would absorb the cold energy, relieving any pain. This process would continue until the effectiveness of the Ice Star Seed was depleted, then the illness will be completely recovered. Only, was the cold poison Nangongyu bore caused by the Ice Star Seed? She couldn't wait to discuss this because if she was able to procure a Jade Fire Toad, at least his body wouldn't receive such damage caused by continuously entering the flame cave, while the risks to his health would also be reduced. Hashi hesitated a moment before answering. Do you know what a Jade Fire Toad is? Jade Fire Toad? Qinglong and the others looked at each other in dismay, their expressions revealing their confusion. Qinglong even called a fourth-ranked doctor in Hell King Manor to come over. He was a gray-haired old man, and although his rank wasn't as high as Zhuke, his knowledge was vaster than hers. But when he heard this, he also repeatedly shook his head. Jade Fire Toad? What magic pill is that? This old one has seen all of the lists describing Miluo continent's magic pills, but has never heard of that one. Young lady, are you sure you haven't heard the name wrong? Hashi helplessly shook her head. It seemed that the things in the All Living Things record really couldn't be found in this world. Seeing Hashi's helpless expression, Qinglong couldn't help but to anxiously ask, is there no other way besides the Jade Fire Toad? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.